What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Lore Reloaded, one of the best Star Trek shows that you will ever find. Probably the best. I'm just going to be honest about that. I have my one of the best creators on with me today, Anti-Trekker. Anti-Trekker, how are you doing, sir?
Well, the pain is starting to subside after watching The Last Jedi.
Yeah, a lot of people are not going to like you. Hey, while we're waiting for people to come in, don't forget to check me out on twitter.com/lore reloaded or at facebook.com/lore reloaded. A lot of the fun stuff that's going on will be also on our Discord, which will be available in the description. And so we're just going to give it a couple more minutes, let people come in, say hi. 14K Leon, what's up with you, brother? Hope you're doing well today. We got Dowso in the house, or Dowso. Mr. Pete 8680 says, oh my god, it sucked. Jonathan Stevie, what's going on in the house? So, for those who...
Actually, give me just a second. I know this is a little impromptu, but I got to grab something that's just out of my reach. Hold on just a second.
We sit here and had like 30 minutes to just...
Yeah, I know.
So just so you guys are aware, this is a conversation back and forth. I'm not sharing your comments. I don't have that set up, but if you want to say something, if you got some opinions, definitely let me know. We're going to be doing spoilers for definitive, so if you don't want spoilers, definitely don't be here. Daniel Bertizan, I love Star Wars 2 Last Jedi. Fantastic. I love Star Wars The Last Jedi. All right, so we're just going to break it down. We're going to go step by step by step. We'll also be taking a look at a video that Anti-Trekker did. He had a couple of issues with it. Hey, if you guys agree or disagree, definitely let us know in the comments, and be sure to take us to task if you don't like what you're hearing. So, the movie starts out, and for the most part, just to let people be aware of how this works, whether we like it or not, we are going to nitpick. We are going to really get down into the nitty-gritty and address things, either because we loved it or because we hated it. So just because we're nitpicking doesn't mean we don't necessarily like it. Maybe we don't. No, Anti-Trekker doesn't like it. And the other thing, the Lore Reloaded, if you get upset that I'm nitpicking stuff and getting into the minutia, you've never seen the channel before, you probably are going to have a bad time. So, let's go ahead and break it down. Jonathan Stevie says he saw it. It was okay, but could have been better. When we first start out with the movie, one thing that bothered me, and again, this isn't going to be total, I hated this. We're going to go through it and have conversation, talk about it, what we enjoyed, what we didn't. But there's one premise that really kind of bugged me about the entire thing. And I talked about this in my review that people are going to see tomorrow, but the fact that the First Order effectively has completely destroyed the New Republic by just attacking its capital and attacking the forces at the capital, and now they're basically back down to rebellion size, or they will be by the end of the movie, right? 40 people, 50 people, maybe. I don't even know if the...
well, we know that the entire resistance by the end of the film can fit on board the Millennium Falcon.
Right.
And the Millennium Falcon is about the size of a large motorhome, so yeah, not a lot of people.
Right. So that's my thing. It seemed too easy. It seemed like they were just trying to repeat what they did before, that they weren't being clever, that they weren't trying to work with it. They just wanted to do what the original movies did and get it down to rebellion side. What are your thoughts when it comes down to that? I didn't like it. I would have loved for them to actually have the New Republic put up a fight, but just to go down to rebellion side, it just seemed lazy, honestly.
Well, whittling it down that much seemed a little pointless, because even in the original films, the rebellion, you got the feeling, was a substantial military force. The rebellion mounted an all-out military assault on the second Death Star, and granted, it was everything they had, but it was enough of a fleet to actually hold their own against the Imperials for at least a while. So yeah, whittling it down to, at the beginning of this film, they actually say that the entirety of the resistance is now 400 people. And yet the First Order has taken over the entire galaxy. So that would be like saying if you are in a city, say the size of Nashville, city of over 500,000 people, and you have one criminal on the loose, and calling that a rebellion.
Right. Well, so the way they built up the First Order, I didn't mind as much because effectively, I've done.
I had a huge problem with it.
Well, go ahead.
Well, in The Force Awakens, and by the way, the reason I got up for a second, because I want to prove to people, because I know they're going to accuse me of being a hater, I really like The Force Awakens, and I have here in my hands my BB-8 that I purchased when The Force Awakens came out, because I really like BB-8. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, in The Force Awakens, what we saw was Starkiller Base and one Star Destroyer.
Sure.
Now, in this film, they say that because Starkiller Base took out the capital of the Republic, that they have now completely taken over. But what we see is about a dozen Star Destroyers, a Dreadnought, and the Supremacy.
Sure.
And, this is a problem that this isn't new to these movies. They really don't understand scale if they think that's a fleet that's going to take over the galaxy.
Vico Divas says the First Order has plot manufacturing and plot child kidnapping skills. Why the Millennium Falcon can't have plot storage skills, I guess. So, I mean, fair.
We'll probably see that in the next movie.
The argument that you're gonna bring back is that they should show it in the movies. I don't disagree. The movie needs to stand on its own. But in ancillary canon resources, that is somewhat explained that the Imperial remnants would go into the unknown regions, and then they would begin rebuilding and using things that they still had in the Empire and rebuilding all of their bases and stuff. And they would do it in secret for about 2 decades. Right? You don't see that. You don't see that, but that's kind of the explanation of why it's there. And even though it's not in the movies, I do like that build up. I will say that.
But and this is one of my biggest problems with The Force Awakens, though, going into this, is that during The Force Awakens, up until the point when Starkiller Base destroys their capital, the Republic is in charge. But apparently, the Republic has no military.
Right. Well, again, goes back to the ancillary thing. What they were doing in the background is during that 25 years, once the Empire had been defeated, they started scaling back way, way back. So here's the thing about Star Wars. If you're in Star Wars as a piece of fiction, hates democracy. Because democracy never works and you always get screwed over. Because the Empire had been going into it, they've been scaling back, they had been corrupted, poisoned, all of that good stuff. And again, none of this is explained. They should have had... The funny thing is in episode 2, in episode 3, we had nothing but these politics, right? That I think many would agree is not Star Wars. And now we have none of that. They completely removed that when we could have used a little bit of it. You know what I'm saying? They should have had some things that
there were mentions of politics in the original trilogy. It wasn't the centerpiece of the story, but it was enough to where you knew what was going on.
Right.
Like the fact that the Emperor had dissolved the Senate in the first Star Wars film.
Right.
Is that the most important thing in the film? No, not at all. But it is enough so that you know what's going on. In this, it feels like, wait a minute, I'm completely confused, because if the Republic is in charge, why is there resistance against the First Order? Shouldn't the Republic just take out the First Order? And where's the Republic's military? And of course, this was a problem back in the prequels as well, because they didn't have a grand army of the Republic until they manufactured 1 million clones. Yes, that is canon. 1 million clones to take over the galaxy. Really? 1 million clones couldn't take over one planet.
Right. Well, again, as I said, they never really do well with democracies. I don't know why they would repeat the mistakes of the past, which is to demilitarize. So, getting into where it starts, so the New Republic has been all but destroyed. There's enough, the First Order has enough ships and is retaking the galaxy. The First Order is the new Empire. And so we have the rebels attempting to escape from the base. Now, the one thing is this was beautifully, everything about the movie is beautiful. And that's one of the things I hate about CGI and movie making nowadays. Because anyone who knows what they're doing can make a beautiful movie, and people will defend it even if the story sucks. I don't think the story is necessarily as horrific as people say it's here, but I do think that that a lot of people give this more credit because they say it's beautiful, kind of like they did with Battlefront 2. Perseus Gold coming out with the super chat saying, because my status quo. Merry Yuletide, and I will say Heil Odin as well, sir. Thank you. By the way, if you want to keep this channel going, best thing you can do is to be a sponsor, hit that little sponsor button, or give super chats. So I think we'll all agree that it's just the graphics are just excellent, and they have been even in the prequels, especially in Episode 3. They've done really well. But so they have the Imperials are attacking the base. It's the last rebel or resistance base. And you have Poe, and they decide to do attack. Was it a dreadnought? Was this the dreadnought, or do you remember what this was?
Yeah, at the beginning it was a dreadnought.
Okay, so they're attacking the dreadnought, and of course Poe is basically like the Super Saiyan of all X-wings of the rebels and stuff. So he's able just to be knocking out the what are they? The air defense, anti-air defense. Whatever, turrets.
Turbo lasers or whatever.
Yeah, and, so here's my thing with that. If you think about it, it's really unrealistic. I don't mind it that much. Again, the heroes being the hero. I think there are some things, while not as extreme, you would see with Luke or Han in the original movies. I didn't mind that as much, and I also did enjoy the back and forth between the two Imperial commanders. We're not talking about the conversation between Poe and the Imperial commander, but the two Imperial commanders, where they're having conversations, saying, knock it out, what's going on, and then you have the wise captain. I like that the Imperials do seem somewhat wise, because he points out he's knocking out our air defense. He knows what they're about to start doing, right?
Well, I enjoyed that. This is the only moment in the entire film that Hux displayed any competence, because yes, he knew right away what Poe was doing.
Right.
But then for the rest of the movie, Hux is just a stupid mustache twirling villain. But the thing is that I think because since you want to do this chronologically, you did miss one thing, and that is, of course, the movie actually opens with Rey giving Luke the lightsaber.
Oh, yeah, well, we'll get back to that in a second. You're right, I did miss that. We'll definitely get back to that. Let me see. What did you think? Let me ask this, because I see something by the Rambling Johnny that I don't know I necessarily agree. And then we're going to talk about the conversation that Poe has, and then the bombing, and then we'll get back to Luke. But he says the story is 1/3 Battlestar Galactica, 1/3 Empire Return, 1/3 whatever the casino thing was about. Okay, I agree with the 1/3 whatever the casino. I don't see this as Battlestar Galactica. A lot of people have seen this as Battlestar. I don't see it. Are you seeing it? Because I don't.
I see some superficial similarities, which is something I'm going to get into in one of my future videos. But no, overall, it doesn't feel like it was a Battlestar Galactica kind of thing. By the way, you got another...
I know. I'm going to let you finish, then we'll do my singing.
But no, it does not feel like Battlestar Galactica to me, except for the fact that they're running away from the First Order.
Yeah, I guess that's where they're getting it from.
Yeah.
Well, by that logic, though, in what is it, Return of the Empire? That's the
Return of the Empire.
Not Return of the Empire. Rise of the Empire. Is it Rise of the Empire? The second original movie. The Empire Strikes Back.
The Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. Wow. And I do this for a living. No, The Empire Strikes Back. That's basically they're running most of the time in that too. Right? So, I mean, in theory, if that's what we're scaling it by, that's Battlestar Galactica-like as well.
And to be fair, for a lot of people that don't realize this, Battlestar Galactica was, in fact, an intentional and direct ripoff of Star Wars. And Star Wars came out in 1977, Battlestar Galactica came out in 1979, with the explicit intent in trying to cash in on the Star Wars frenzy.
Right. Going back to the Super Chat, again, guys, this is... This is how I do it. This is how I feed my kids. You can help out. Less than 72 hours have passed since the start of Force Awakens. Absolutely no sense of scale. To be honest, it's pathetic and reshoots are obvious. Dyed beard. Okay, not sure with the dyed beard. Oh, with Luke.
No, the dyed beard, that's not a reshoot issue like what we had with Superman and Justice League. That was intentional because that was Luke as a Force apparition, and so he was supposed to look different. And it was supposed to be one of the visual cues that he wasn't really there. Kind of like in The Matrix when they explain that when you're in the Matrix, you look like whatever you want to look like.
Right. So he's attacking the ship. They have a back and forth that it didn't feel Star Wars to me, and maybe because I didn't find the joke that funny is why it didn't connect with me. But basically had the Verizon "Can you hear me now?" Trying to mess with him. It's supposed to be this epic speech. The Imperial officer is taking it very seriously. Poe's just messing with him. I didn't like it. It didn't really seem very Star Wars to me.
Yeah, I thought that was honestly. Well, on the one hand, the dialogue was genuinely funny. That whole situation. On the other hand, that felt like that belonged in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
That seems like something that Star-Lord would say if trying to buy time against some powerful enemy, and the way they did it, that was just stupid.
Ross666 says, didn't they say in The Force Awakens the main Republic fleet was at the capital, was hit? Basically, it was Pearl Harbor with the entire fleet there.
I don't recall that. If they did, great. But, if so, then yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. That would explain why they don't have that many ships. But down to 400. So you had all but 400 of your resistance at one spot. That would be the prime target. That's a little silly.
That's more idiotic than what happened at Pearl Harbor. By the way, Perseus Gold, personally putting my kids through college, he still had the dyed beard sitting on the rock. I missed that, if that was so.
I'd have to go back and look at it again. However, at this point, unless somebody gives Lore here a super chat with the specific instructions for him to give the cash to me and pay for a ticket for me to go see it again, I am not going to go see this movie again until it comes out on Blu-ray.
I'll do it if that's what the super chat's for. I'm here for you guys. So it would be like the U.S. military was disbanded and defense was left to the states and National Guard. It was. So here's a question for you. They do the bombing run. It was supposed to be like a Pearl Harbor thing, like they're bombing it, like they're doing that.
With gravity and air in space.
Well, yes. We'll get to that in a second. Why weren't they using Y-wings? In the span that it took to get those, and I get that these probably drop a lot more and can be a lot more devastating once they get over it. It seemed like it took forever and a day to get those ships where they needed to go. Why didn't they have Y-wings? They could have done 4 strafing runs.
Why didn't they use ion torpedoes, which we saw now in Rogue One, where a single, because if Poe had a couple of ion torpedoes on his X-wing, he could have taken down all the defenses of the Dreadnought. Then the bombers could go in without having to worry about it. The defenses. That made the problem is they're very inconsistent. But I believe I'm trying to remember. If in The Force Awakens, what ships we saw? I know we saw X-wings. Did we see any Y-wings or any other type of bombers?
I don't know if we saw Y-wings. Like Mr. Pete 8680 says, Y-wings are now ancient. Do you mean the X-wings?
X-wings? Yeah. And Poe still flies around in an X-wing.
They also had A-wings too. I remember A-wings, which are ancient as well. Yeah. In fact, you see A-wings in Clone Wars. That's how old those things are. But so let's get to that. So they get the bombers there. Poe's not listening to orders. He's being very brash. He's very, very, very abrasive. He knows what he's got to do. While this was a stupid move, at this point, I think that you could do it on adrenaline or it's classic Star Wars. So I can see them not demoting him, in fact, was a surprise to me, but I could see them just letting him get away with it at this point. That's going to come back later in the movie, but right now I could see them letting him get away with it, being demoted. I understand that. They get the fighters over there, and they get the bombers over there. And I like the fact that they launched the TIE fighters, and it does feel like they may actually lose. And I wish they kind of had. I wish they kind of did lose. I think that would have been more interesting. But at least it felt like they were getting torn to ribbons, which they should, because the Empire is now ultra stronger than they are. Let's talk about gravity and things and how that worked. So there's a couple of things in that scene, because I was watching it. I had already seen your review. I had seen other people's reviews. First off, it didn't look like there was any shield. So you get the woman, she's shooting, and the bombs aren't dropping. So she comes out from her little bay, and she sees that the bombs are still there, and the door's open, but nothing's happening. I didn't see any shielding or anything right there, so I don't know why stuff isn't being, first off, sucked out, or how she can still breathe. Was there a shield there that maybe I was missing that would allow her to continue to operate?
That is something I mentioned in my review, is that I did not see any evidence of a shield or any evidence that the bombs had any kind of propulsion. And with modern visual effects as they are, it would have been extremely easy to add that. I mean, heck, they can add it to a television show. They did it in, Star Trek Discovery.
Right.
You can add a shield effect to the bomb bay door so that people like us, because there are lots of nerds like us are going to pick apart this stuff, will see the bombs go through the shield.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that, she's lying there on the gateway with the door open, space is 5 feet away from her, but she's breathing just fine.
Right. Well, that was my thing. I assume there's going to be a shield there that we didn't see. Otherwise, it wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
So the problem you had, and a lot of people have, and I really feel like, I'm going to be honest with you, Trekker, I get what you're saying. It feels curmudgeon-y and nitpicky to me. Because when I watched it, and this is me giving more than what the movie tells us, but this seems like the most logical thing. Even though we don't see it, we can still infer a bit of logic to it. Is first off, probably there is an atmosphere within where she is, because that's the only way she can breathe, right? And if there's an atmosphere, there's also gravity. We see that because she's not floating. So when she lets it go, it makes sense that they would fall down, because that's the way the gravity is working on the ship. And then there would be no reason these things would not have some kind of electromagnetic field on the bottom that would pull them down. I understand what you're saying. I understand what it looks like, but I feel like the benefit of the doubt should be given here on how they hit the ship.
Okay, but they're in high orbit. They're not, unless the ship generates an atmosphere, which it's not that big. I mean, yes, the Dreadnought is a big ship, but it's not so big that it has its own gravity well and atmosphere. And this is not the first time they've done this in Star Wars. They did it in Rogue One, too, where Darth Vader was standing on a platform. Now, you could argue Darth Vader has an environmental suit, so that might be, part of the explanation there. But I did not see anything on screen to indicate, gravity. You could say within the ship there's some kind of artificial gravity, fine, but the bombs just dropping through space, hitting another ship because of gravity makes no sense. The fact that the air, and it's not even the only time they did it in this movie. Look at later when they open up the airlock to let Leia in, everybody doesn't get sucked out into space.
Well, we'll get into that, but let me ask you this. There is obviously an atmosphere and some form of gravity in the ship. That's the only way that she's able to stay there and not float. It's the only way she's able to breathe. It's the only way that the remote control falls down, right? So we'll agree that that's there and we just didn't see the effect, right? Okay, now, when she drops the bombs are being pushed down by the gravity into space, and since there's going to be very little resistance in space, wouldn't they continue just to go the way they're being pushed down? It would be like if I took a ball and threw it through a shield that it could go through and would just continue to go that way.
Yes, but that's also not the type. I mean, if you look at the exterior shots of the ship, it's designed to look like B-52 dropping bombs. It doesn't look like bombs floating out into space. It looks like bombs accelerating downward because of gravity.
Sure.
And I get it. that's what they were going for. They were trying to, because Star Wars, all the way back to the beginning, the fighting in Star Wars was based on old World War II films. In fact, if you haven't seen it, there's an old movie called The Dam Busters, which is exactly the Death Star battle, except in World War II.
Right.
It's actually really well done. But if you're gonna do that for effect, I get it, but it also is kind of laughable in that a modern, sophisticated audience is going to say, this isn't the days of Flash Gordon where they can just have people breathing in space, and because we don't know,
right?
By the way, you do know you got another.
I'm about to read it. I wasn't interrupting you. Because Perseus Gold is putting my children through college. I got 2 of them, so I need someone else to put the other one through college. Contrivance Poe didn't know if the planet is the system until so late in the movie. Moral equal blindly follow orders. Don't question females in authority. I will read almost anything you put in a super chat, by the way. So if you want to counter that, definitely put it in a super chat, and I'll read that. And I'm going to dance.
What Perseus says is 100% correct. Poe's arc through this film is never question female authority. That's his arc, because that's what he gets in trouble for, and at the end of the movie he has to learn to just blindly accept female authority.
So from Brazil, it says, anti-tracker, your wisdom is making Lore Reloaded crazy, LOL. He also says the momentum of the bombs kept going to be to the Dreadnought. And Lore Reloaded, what is the problem with this mistake in the movie? This is just a small thing in a movie full of S like this, LOL. It's not a huge deal. I'm not making a big thing.
We are nitpicking a little bit.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying that when people are getting onto this, I honestly think, I personally can just write it off as this seems the most likely, and it is logical to me. This is how it would go. One thing I loved about that battle is, again, it felt real. It felt like it mattered. It felt like they were losing people, especially when you see Leia. And that's one thing that Star Wars has had trouble with, in my opinion. Even in the earlier original, it really felt, you could feel that these people mattered and these people were dying. Right?
I do think, and in fact, at the beginning of my review, I said there are a couple of things I liked about the film, and one of them is that battle sequence. I think that battle was the highlight of the film for me. I think that visually it was very well done. You could feel what was going on. You could feel the loss, and you didn't get lost in just, it's a big sea of special effects. You actually cared. You knew where Poe was, where the bombers were, where Leia was, where everybody was in this whole sequence. And so I really did like the whole battle. Well,
and let me say this too. Again, it's like you said. I feel like almost every time a ship was destroyed, especially on the Resistance Rebellion, whatever they're calling themselves at the time stamp in the movie, it felt like it mattered to me, and we'll get into that more. But it really did. It felt like it mattered almost every time they lost a ship. Now, let's go back to the beginning of the movie, the part I did forget about. You have Rey. She comes up. She hands the lightsaber to him, to Luke. Luke takes the lightsaber. He looks at it. He takes a moment. It looks like he's really trying to connect with it. And then he throws it behind him. I thought he threw it into the sea. Luckily, he didn't, but he just throws it away like it's nothing. I get where they were going with the laugh, because it was a cheap laugh, but I think that at the expense of the connection that really should have been there with him, I don't think that it was worth it.
Cheap laugh is an understatement, in my opinion, because here's the thing. The Force Awakens, well, again, I like The Force Awakens overall, even though I do have my problems with that film. But The Force Awakens, the entire point of the film was building up to that final shot of Rey ascending to the mountaintop and handing Luke the lightsaber. That was what we were building to this whole time. And then the next thing, Luke's like, screw that. That was a big F you to the fans. Literally. That was Rian Johnson just saying, I don't care about what you guys like. We're just going to do something different here.
Well, here's my thing too. Again, it was a cheap laugh. I don't think it was worth it. And let's say that we wanted to have him not want this connection, that he had truly given away his Jedi ways, that he felt the Jedi needed to leave, and that he didn't want anything to do with it. He didn't want to be a Jedi. I think it would have been more interesting if he said, how did you get this? Where did it come from? You see him slowly walk away from Rey towards a rock. He sets it down. He looks at it, and she gives the answer that it was from Maz or whatever. And you have a brief flashback, just like less than 10 seconds of the Jedi Temple on fire. And then he takes his android hand and he just smashes it to pieces. If you really wanted to do that, I think you should have made it count and made it more emotional, not for a cheap laugh. Right. And I think it was just disrespectful to the original, to Luke's character, and I don't even think if he wanted to give it up that he would have done that. Right. And there wasn't really anything more to that than her being confused and following him. Then we get to that battle. And so they move into hyperspace. Poe gets demoted, and I don't even... Did he go from commander to captain or something? Or captain to commander? Or something?
Yeah, something. I don't even remember what his rank was, but right. Yeah, he gets demoted.
Right. And so they come out of hyperspace. They think they're safe. Lo and behold, the Empire shows up 30 seconds later. That is kind of Battlestar Galactica, now that I think about it. It's the 33 minutes thing, because they were able to be tracked through hyperspace. But still, I don't... did they ever really explain? I know they go to destroy the tracker, but did they ever really explain how they're tracking through hyperspace?
No, and that was one of my problems with it, is that because everybody's like, wait, it's impossible to track people through light speed. And some people try to argue that, well, it's been done before. No, it hasn't. The only time we've seen ships tracked is if a tracking device was put on the ships, in the case of the Millennium Falcon from the first Star Wars film. Theoretically, in the Star Wars universe, tracking something in hyperspace is impossible, yet they have a way to do it now, and everybody's scratching their heads saying how impossible it is. However, for some reason, Finn seems to know just enough detail about it to what they need to do to move forward here. And apparently this is one of the cases where the First Order has, I guess... I don't know, a clause in all things that they do, that they have to do things in the dumbest way possible, because if they have a fleet of 13 ships, they're only going to track them with one of them.
Is that... Well, I was going to ask you, do you know if that's how that actually works? Where they use a lead ship or whatever? Or
that makes no sense. So what they're saying, because what Finn was saying, is that any of the 13 ships could track them, but only the lead ship will. And I think this is kind of because Han, for example, in Empire Strikes Back, knew that the Imperial procedure was to dump their garbage before going into hyperspace, and that's how they escaped in the one scene in Empire. Classic moment in Star Wars. But in this, it's like, that makes no sense. If you are tracking a fleet and you have 13 ships capable of tracking, wouldn't you want all the ships tracking them in case, A, they all jump in different directions, which is something that you would think that the Resistance would have thought of, or B, one of their trackers fails.
Right. Yeah, I wish they'd explain it, because it doesn't really go into that, but...
Yeah, nothing about that makes sense, and again, it's just one of those things that, they just... Rian Johnson is just like, screw it, reasons.
I thought
a wizard did it.
I thought they were going to tie it into the light. You remember that light thing that Leia had so that Rey could find them again?
Yeah.
I seriously thought they were going to tie it in.
Where did that come from?
Right, I don't remember that either, but I thought that's where they're going to tie it in. So, Poe gets back on the ship, obviously. They get away. Finn is introduced in the weirdest way possible, where he comes out of being... he comes out of being hurt from a lightsaber to the back, which looked like it destroyed his spine, whatever. They could have fixed it, and that just happened all off camera. He comes back in a silly way with all these whatever coming out of him, juices, Bacta, I assume is what it is. So they're off to the races when it comes to that, right? I thought it was stupid. I don't have much to add with Finn showing up the way he did, but I guess they kind of explained that now he's better. He's been healed. He was in the med bay. So from there, they go to the bridge, and they have to figure out what's going on. What's the next? Well, is that when do they kill? Do they kill off Akbar before? They have to have that. So is that when that happens?
Dies in this, that's when Leia gets sucked out into space. Is when Akbar
Right,
dies.
but that happens next, doesn't it? Luke, hold on. Luke Yoda spoke Plato philosophy, cycle of the regime. Woot for that. I don't know what you're saying, but I'm all with it. No, doesn't that happen right after that, though? Isn't that when the bridge is attacked? Right after they see Finn?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, because then Poe's ship is destroyed. And when Leia gets sucked out into space, that is one of the most laughable moments.
Yeah, so I believe that's the next step. So you have Leia and you have Akbar on the bridge. And we see Akbar all of like 3 minutes or something like that. And they're trying to figure out what's going on. Why are they being attacked? How is this occurring? And for some reason, they're like, well, they must be tracking us in space. Did they ever even explain how they came to that conclusion?
No, they just suddenly come up with the magic solution that they all figure out exactly how they're doing it, even though there's no explanation for it whatsoever.
Right, but they suddenly appear, and it's like, well, they must be tracking us. The other thing they did, another thing I like that they did really well, was the gas thing. It's like, well, we only have enough fuel for one more hyperspace jump, and it really felt like they didn't have gas. It always felt like this was a big deal and this was impactful. It wasn't just something blasé. It was done really well. So I liked how they dealt with the fuel. That felt really, really well. Then the attack on the ship. And here's my question to you. The ship's shields, it looks like to me, the ship's shields never went down. So how did they get a good shot off the bridge, even with... Because you would think that even though proton torpedoes are pretty powerful, probably not as powerful as the weaponry on the whatever that ship was. I forget what it was.
The Supremacy.
The Supremacy. Yeah, but it was it was huge. You would think that their cannons would at least match what the Dreadnought had, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, they did, because when they started destroying ships, when they got in range, they were just knocking them out one after the other. So how are these getting past those shields? I mean, it never really explains that either, right?
A wizard did.
A wizard did it? Because even Kylo can feel that his mother's on the bridge. His mother feels that he's in the cockpit. He doesn't fire, so he doesn't use any magic to it. It's just all of a sudden they destroy it. And then, we find out that Leia is somewhat of a Force wizard because she uses the Force to get herself back onto the bridge.
And the cool thing was, so when she grabbed that arrow and said, "I'm Mary Poppins, y'all," that was awesome.
That's what I'm Mary Poppins, y'all, and then she just runs at it straight. Yeah. Mary Poppins. So here's me probably giving the movie a little bit more than you do. It is possible. I don't think that this breaks what we see with the Force. I certainly believe they do it later. But right now, everything that happens to her, in theory, is consistent with what we've seen with the Force. The ability to move yourself or push yourself in a certain direction.
Well,
and
yes and no.
And survive in... You've seen people survive in a vacuum, I don't think space, but you've seen Jedi survive in a vacuum. You've seen Jedi survive underwater when they should have drowned. I don't think that this necessarily breaks what you can do with the Force at this point.
But you see, that's the problem, is that it's not what you can do with the Force that's broken here. What's broken here is the idea that the Force requires training and discipline. Leia, while certainly a powerful Force user, or at least a powerful Force sensitive, I mean, she is a Skywalker after all, but has had no training. At least none that we know of. She has never used any Force abilities other than a general connection. And, even when she telepathically communicates with Luke, well, that was initiated by Luke.
Right.
It wasn't her doing it, but she kind of got what was going on.
Do you think maybe he trained her a little bit? Maybe she did have some training?
They could retcon that in to make it work. However, advanced telekinesis like that, and yet she does nothing before that, that seems a little odd.
Right. Well, I don't know that it's advanced. I mean, again, this is the vacuum of space, so you don't have a ton of resistance. So they could, in theory, she could have just pushed herself a little bit. Now, what doesn't make any sense is, like you said, when they open that door, because that surprised me. I was like, how are they going to get her in?
Right.
Because as soon as they open,
she knocks on the door.
Yeah.
I love the fact that, first of all, so you're telling me a blast door that can keep the vacuum of space out is so thin that you can literally knock on the door and hear it on the other side. Because, if any of you have ever been on a naval vessel with a hatch closed, try knocking on the door and see if anybody can hear you.
and then she opens, because as soon as they open that door, I was like, he's just killed everybody on that deck, at least in that area of that deck. But apparently you can open that door and the vacuum of space does not suck out all the atmosphere. Again, I guess
because
you could say shielding. Well, in theory, I guess they have Star Trek-like shielding, which would allow things to go through it and keep one side safe and the other not.
But if that were the case, then she shouldn't have been in a vacuum when she was on the deck, but she was clearly still in a vacuum.
Right.
Because she didn't breathe until they brought her through the door.
Right. One of the things I say, if you can enjoy this movie, you really can. You just have to turn off some logic and your brain, because it is more an action movie in that respect. So she gets in, and of course she is incapacitated, which, being in the vacuum of space, will definitively incapacitate you. That's for sure.
But she's in a coma for half the movie after this, and yet she was able to fly.
Well, maybe that was the last of her strength and things. I don't know. I don't think she has any purpose in this movie. I even say that in my review tomorrow, and a lot of people are going to get upset about that. That's not. It's not trying to put her down. It's just,
you could have cut Leia out of the movie; it would have made no difference.
Right. I think that they don't have any more stories to tell. Well, definitively now. But I would, even if she had been alive, even if she was still alive, I don't think they have any more stories to tell with Leia. I think that she should have passed the torch in The Force Awakens. You don't have to kill her to pass the torch like you did with Han, but I think that they should have definitely passed the torch in The Force Awakens. So now we got to figure out who's going to be in charge. Here's something odd to me. So they have the little meeting, which I think was reminiscent of the first ever movie in A New Hope, or as you like to say, Star Wars, no other title.
Yeah, because that's what the movie was bloody called when it came out in theaters. Okay.
Poe was acting like he's like, wow, they may put me in charge. Did you get that feeling? Because there was at no point would they have put him in charge. Even if he wasn't demoted, he is a fighter pilot. Why would they put a fighter pilot in charge?
Yeah.
He kind of looked like, oh man, they might be about to call on me. And there's a couple of things to that, which makes him an idiot. First off, you think they might have talked to him and been like, hey, we're going to put you in charge. We need to talk to the troops. You might need to prepare for that. The second thing is he's a fighter pilot. He doesn't seem like he has the best naval experience, so he probably wouldn't be good in that role. And then he had been demoted. Did you get that sense too, out of curiosity?
No, actually, honestly, I didn't really think about that as far as Poe thinking that he was going to get some kind of extra duty or anything. I didn't see that. I did see the whole thing with him and Vice Admiral Haldo to be one of the most stupid confrontations in the history of cinema. And I mean, just the fact that apparently she just didn't want to tell him what the plan was because reasons, and yet and she's like, oh, you don't need to know. I'm sorry, everybody on that ship needed to know. Everybody, without exception. They didn't. I don't think they were too concerned that they had spies aboard the ship at that point, because the ships were getting pelted with weapons the whole time. And in a matter of hours, everybody was going to have to load up on these transports and go to this rebel base on Crate, and then very quickly set up the rebel base for defense against a possible ground assault. And so everybody needs to know. You need to brief everybody. Them not telling Poe would be like, imagine if in Return of the Jedi they all come into the council room where Mon Mothma was, and she says, "Oh no, you should leave. We'll tell you what we need to do when we actually do the attack. We don't need."
Right. I see what you're saying. I don't. I agree. Maybe she needed to tell everybody. I don't see why she would have kept it from Poe. If she had, Poe needed to step back. He is no one important, even when he still had his first before the demotion. You're a fighter pilot. It's your job to go out and blow things up when you're told to, and then just relax when you're not. Now I get it. This is supposed to be an arc for him not to fire first or anything like that. I think it just makes him an idiot, and ultimately makes it so he deserves a court-martial and to be killed. We'll get that at a later point, but I get where they're going with it. It just makes him stupid. She should have told everybody, but if she didn't, he needed to back off. It's honestly none of his business, beyond the fact that he could die. But you know what I'm saying. Military-wise, he needs to just relax and do what his orders are and trust that his superiors have it in control. So they move back to Luke and Rey. Luke and Rey is such a non-event for me that we can really talk about a lot of it without having to go back and forth. For me, I do like. So he doesn't want to be a Jedi anymore. Basically, because he caused his nephew to go to the dark side, which we'll get in a minute or two. But because he caused his nephew to go to the dark side, join a Sith, form the First Order, and go to basically be in a position to conquer the entire universe, he decides to go and hide because he's a coward and he doesn't care if he gets everybody killed. I think that this is character assassination of Luke. And I think they really did a disservice, and I agree with Mark Hamill with what they did with him. So let's talk. So he's telling Rey that he's not going to help her. Ultimately, he decides he's going to. What was the thing that changed his mind, by the way?
Maybe drinking the giant walrus monster.
No, there was a point. Yeah, that's not a. That was just stupid. I love the blue milk, like you said. It was from. And so, for those who haven't seen it, or if you did, so he's milking the thing with the big breasts, and to get the milk out. And it's funny because the beast is looking at him, and then when Rey walks up, he looks at her. It almost looks like he was expecting her to start again. He's like, "You want to try?" It was so stupid. But why did he want to train her ultimately? There was an event. Do you remember what it was by chance? Probably not.
Well, yeah, it was R2 showed him
that's right.
Transmission of Leia begging Obi-Wan for help.
Right, that's right.
So R2 ex machina for the win.
Right, and then he says, that was a low blow.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's talk about, and you have really strong feelings about this. Kylo's fall to the dark side, wherein Luke sees the darkness in him. Luke walks in and, basically, without the dude's consent, goes into his mind and finds darkness, pulls out his lightsaber, activates it, and raises it. Well, I don't know if he raises it or not. It depends on who you believe. But at least activates his lightsaber with the initial intent of killing his nephew. Mm-hmm. And I know that you have some strong feelings when it comes to that specifically.
That was, I know some people like to say that Kylo killing Han was like this irredeemable thing. That was the most irredeemable thing in all of Star Wars. The fact that they took Luke Skywalker, the man who was willing to sacrifice himself because he felt that there could be a little bit of goodness still in Vader. Vader, the second most evil person in the universe. Luke sacrificed himself to save him. And now, my nephew might be going to the dark side. Yeah, better kill him.
Let's just hashtag.
Let's just straight up murder him, Luke, you could do a lot of interesting things with Luke to make him jaded. I think that making Luke say, become disillusioned with the concept of the Jedi would be fine. Because if you look at the whole history of Star Wars from the prequels through the original trilogy and all that, you can make an argument that the Jedi have way too much hubris and everything, and that has caused so many problems in the galaxy. And so, with that could make an interesting arc. That he doesn't want to train Rey because he genuinely wants the Jedi to simply end.
Right.
And the only way for the Jedi to end is for him to not train anymore.
Right. I liked... Yeah, it was just bad. And then, regardless of whose version you believe, which I probably tend to believe it's a little bit of in the middle between the two, he brings the roof down, Luke wakes up, everything's on fire. Here's an interesting piece. In The Force Awakens, it was raining. And maybe this is a different time, but I thought when he was looking at the destroyed remnants of the temple, for Luke it was raining. It was not raining in The Last Jedi. And then he decides to go off like a coward, even though he's basically set this in terror on the world. That just makes me hate him.
So yeah, not only does Luke decide that the solution to the, he might go evil, so better murder him. And then, so Kylo or Ben Solo at this point does the correct thing and simply defends himself.
Right.
And then, of course, goes off with Snoke and becomes a whatever they want to call it, pseudo Sith or whatever. But then, Luke wants to then go in exile after he just created a new Emperor Vader relationship instead of, I better deal with this now.
Right.
Because, Luke is the only person who could.
Right.
And no, I think I'll, after I tried to murder my nephew and created a new Dark Lord, I'll just, retire on an island.
Yeah, not only will I do that, not only will I run away, but I'll adopt a belief and not train anyone else who would be the best chance of defeating him. Now, I like his message that not only the Jedi have the light side, that's hubris, but right now, the Jedi, a fully trained Jedi, would be someone who had the best chance of defeating him. So not only will I not take care of the issue, I'm going to adopt something that will will ensure that no one else will have the best chance of defeating him either. But beyond that, if we get past that, I do like the message that it's hubris to think that the Jedi are the only ones that can do the light side. Look at every time the Jedi get involved or try to do something, it goes bad. Apparently they knew about Sidious being Palpatine at this point, so he knew for sure, but he said it like everybody knew. The Jedi Council allowed Sidious to take over. The Jedi Council didn't stop him. They were too egotistical. He, as a Jedi Master, tried to train people, and look what happened. It got all these people killed. So that it is okay for the Jedi to die, which I think is an interesting message.
And the nice thing is that's so consistent with the overall Star Wars message, which is, of course, if at first you don't succeed, quit.
Yeah, and ensure no one else can do what you've done. Yeah,
isn't that what the whole Jedi philosophy is based on?
Right.
Failed you have. Go to exile I must. That's consistent.
The rambling Johnny says, I think it's the fact that he easily lost a bunch of students to Snoke. I get that. But at this point,
that's not. But what we saw was he didn't lose students to Snoke. He tried to murder his nephew, and so his nephew was like, maybe I shouldn't stay in the school where the headmaster is trying to kill me.
Right. And he was probably a little angry and a little confused at almost being murdered by his own uncle.
Yeah, and the thing is that it's and this is why it breaks everything so much is that even in the last film, Han and Leia talked about how Snoke seduced Kylo. And no, Luke...
Luke tried to murder him.
Yeah, there was no seduction there. It was just, I guess... if your teacher's trying to murder you, probably need to find a different school.
Well, probably the seduction was Kylo would said, hey, I just got one rule. Will you not murder me in my sleep? Snoke said yes, and that was the seduction. I won't murder you in your sleep. So... How did you feel about the connection between Kylo and Rey?
That was actually interesting. I didn't have a problem with that. I think that Kylo and Rey, although the shirtless scene was kind of stupid and gratuitous, but overall, I like their dynamic where the two of them are both obviously untrained. And the two of them are both seeking answers. And I genuinely didn't know which way it was going to go in the throne room scene. I didn't know if Kylo was going to go light and Rey was going to go dark, or vice versa, or if they were going to both go dark, which I think would have been really interesting. And that was actually the best thing about this movie is the way they set up the two. And I disagree as far as sexual tension. I didn't think there was any real sexual tension between the two. I think they were kindred spirits.
No, I think with his shirt off, that was an intentional.
Well, the shirt off thing, that was, like I said, I felt that scene was completely out of place. That was like the F-bombs in Star Trek or the Klingon boobs. It was just like, why did you throw that in there? It made no sense. I don't, and who knows? Maybe they will develop a, what do they call it, Reylo or whatever?
Reylo.
Yeah, and if they do, that could work, or it could fail miserably. But that's for another story. But Reylo. I felt like it was actually kind of interesting because these two were the two most gifted people of their generation, and that they have this collective bond in that neither of them have a teacher who they can rely on.
Right.
And so I thought there was some interesting potential there, but they kind of pissed it away by the end of this film.
I think they showed him being a little more powerful and a little more akin to the Force, especially when they first started, because he walks out, you can tell they're seeing each other, but not. And he looks around, and he's like, I can only see you. I can't see around. Do you see what's around me? Like it shows him a little more seasoned, that he doesn't know what's going on, but he understands it a little bit more. And this is where we first start seeing the Force being broken, where he is physically starts being there, especially when she's in the rain and he has rainwater on his hand, right?
Right.
So this is where we can start seeing the Force being used in a way that it's never been. My only problem with this, Force Tinder, as they say, Force Skype, my only problem with this is if this ability was possible, then either these two were more powerful than even the Chosen One, or for some reason Jedi Masters and Anakin Skywalker didn't use an ability that would have allowed them to win the war.
Right.
You're telling me the ability to appear almost anywhere you want, even if it required a connection, could not have been very useful during the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. That's the problem, I think, with power creep, as they say in games, is that the more powers you give, the more you have to explain away why they weren't used before, right?
Well, and that's a common problem with Star Trek in the later you and I have talked about it a little bit in the past, is that the later versions of Trek have this problem where they just make the technology so advanced that you run out of possible problems to have.
Right.
And I think that the Force, they've been trying to make the Force better and better and better and better and better, but they've taken it so far now, which makes no sense, because now you have a couple of noobs at the Force displaying abilities that even the Jedi Masters couldn't do in the prequels.
Right. So
and that I had a problem with.
And again, yeah, just those abilities would have been so useful during the Clone, which are canon, by the way. The Clone Wars, the animated series, and Rebels are canon, and they can't use these abilities. Now, Rebels, I guarantee you, since they haven't finished that series, we'll probably see that happen in the later seasons.
So?
Yeah, I think they'll write it in at least once, just because they can now. So let's get back to the plot with the ship being attacked. So they're going full steam to stay outside of the range of the bigger ships, which I thought it was. At least they bring it up and they address it, because I think it's Kylo who says, why do we have all of this? Why do we have this massive ship, which is like half the size of a planet, if we can't take out 3 rebel ships? And they point out, even in space, size matters, and you're still pushing more than you are. At least they address that, I think. Which was
it still makes no sense, though.
You don't think? I think a bigger ship would be harder to move forward, even in space. Relatively, a bigger ship would still have more resistance than a smaller ship.
No,
because space still has. It
might
space still has
accelerate.
resistance.
Well, the problem is, I mean, physics. You can't really use physics in Star Wars because they butcher it so bad. But there's why would they? I mean, because you correct me if I'm wrong, but during this chase scene, which was of course half the movie. During this chase with the First Order following the Resistance ships, they looked like they were maybe between 10 and 20 kilometers between the two. Not a huge amount of range. Now, if you have a fighter pilot in a typical plane today on Earth, you have range better than that. Okay?
Right.
Just putting it out there. Now, they apparently can't penetrate the shields because their shields are too tough unless they get a little bit closer, and then they can just blow them to pieces.
Right.
Why? And why is it that TIE fighters apparently can fly right through the shields and
completely destroy bridges without any defense?
And why didn't they launch their TIE fighters again? Right. Why did they just hold back and keep pelting them from a distance? Why didn't they have... they had a dozen Star Destroyers. Why didn't they have 4 or 5 Star Destroyers do a quick hyperspace jump and get in front of them?
Right. I think you brought that up. Why not just,
I mentioned that in my review,
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, that would have been an interesting thing. It would have had to been a little bit of a testy maneuver. They'd have to jump up and then back down, but they still could have done it. That wouldn't have been a big deal. Ian Mays brings back something when we were talking about force powers. Snoke could have kept all these amazing force possibilities a secret, especially if he was neither Sith nor a Jedi. 2 things to that. First off, Luke knew it, and I dare say that the Jedi Masters who had all of the training for 1,000 generations knew more and had more knowledge than Luke ever did. But Luke figured it out. Number 2, let's assume that you're right, and Snoke knew all these things and kept it all secret. If Snoke knew all of these things, and he's in the background, that creates another issue, because Palpatine, Sidious, would have a huge issue with the existence of Snoke. And I don't think that Snoke could have hid from Sidious. I have a hard time believing that, given how powerful Sidious was. Because Sidious and Anakin were the culmination of the plan of 2. They always killed, the stronger would always kill the weaker, and ultimately that would lead up to the strongest. It was a weird form of Force evolution. So they were supposed to be the culmination, and you're telling me Snoke hid from what was supposed to be the most powerful Sith the galaxy had ever seen. That seems a little weird to me. But that's my opinion on it. And then the Right Gamers had something. Yoda wasn't there to tell people not to use their super special abilities lest they turn evil. So yeah.
Well, and that's another problem that I had with both this and The Force Awakens, is Rey seems to use anger a lot.
Right.
I mean, a lot. And, I mean, because every time you see Rey doing something, she's got this look on her face.
Right.
And this goes all the way back to the first time, like when she first sees Finn, and BB-8 tells her that dude stole Poe's jacket. She goes after him with this look of ferocity like we've never seen before. And nobody in this entire series of films has said, you really need to bring that anger into check because, that's a path to the dark side.
Here's the thing. The whole you can't be angry, and maybe you'll correct me, but it seems like a the prequel tripe when they really got into that, because
no, that was a big thing in Empire Strikes Back.
I don't know, because I think that you can get angry for a time and still be. I mean, Luke gets angry and wails and comes back. He uses anger
but
at different times.
Yoda cautions him in Empire that once you have to beware of fear, anger, and aggression, for they are the dark side. And once you start down the dark path, forever it will dominate your destiny. That you will become, as Yoda put it, an agent of evil if you depend on those types of emotions to fuel you.
Right.
And so yes, as far as the dark side of the Force was always about anger, aggression, fear.
Right.
And so you can't, I think...
I agree that you shouldn't use it to fuel you. I don't know. It just seems like Luke, even throughout the movies, uses anger effectively and is able to stop himself.
He only loses it once. He only uses anger once in combat, and that was in Return of the Jedi. And he almost lost it. No. If it wasn't for the fact that the Emperor pointed out to him that Luke was now ready to take his place at his side, and he looked at his hand and realized that he was becoming Vader, quite literally. Luke would have become... And you should read the novelization of it, because in the novelization it's even more clear that Luke is actually considering it.
I never read the novelization, so yeah, maybe it's a little more clear. I don't know. It seems like he got angry a couple of times and was able to pull himself back. But that aside, I agree. Rey gets angry a lot. Is not that. But
and to address, by the way, the comment from Joel Cool McCall, Mace Windu. I've heard people say that Mace Windu utilizes both anger and serenity, trying to light and dark. However, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's any canon sources that say that. I think that that's just assumptions and legends.
That is in books and games. Right. So at best, it would be...
It would be legend.
Yeah, it'd be beta. Because the explanation was that, and it was even in the, may have been in the novelization too, but the novelization is not considered canon like the book, like the movies are. He created his own form of fighting, where he would use the dark side during the entire fight, which would make him faster and keener. It would be like just staying on the edge, and in fact, that's what got him killed for all intents and purposes, because he had finally just slipped a little bit too far with Palpatine, even though the Force was warning him that Anakin was about to betray him. He was so focused on the darkness that was now filling within him that he didn't listen to the thing. That's the novelization. But yeah, I mean, he's supposed to quote unquote have his own form, which used both light and dark side, in theory. So here's something funny that I think you'll enjoy. So we finally get to the point where they're like, okay, well, so we have Finn who's trying to escape, and I hate this. I think this is character assassination of Finn, because Finn is trying to escape to go save Rey, and if they don't end up together, man, that is a lot of build-up for nothing. But he's trying to save Rey, so he's basically becoming a coward again when his entire arc in The Force Awakens is going from coward to hero, to stop running, to standing up for something that matters. And he does a great arc in The Force Awakens. They throw all of that away so that he can get stunned in a funny type way with Rose, and they introduce Rose. Ultimately, I don't like Rose. I do like the fact that maybe it was her sister, that they have that tie-in. And while it was meant as comedic and I didn't find it as funny, I thought it was interesting that she had some hero worship, because I think Finn would have hero worship as people who would look up to him, someone who turned away from the Empire and then did all these great things, right? And a real hero. But I think it completely character assassinates Finn, though it is funny to watch him get shocked and then brought forward. Did you have any thoughts on that? I mean, again, some of it was comedic.
I thought that having him revert back to the running coward that he was at the beginning of The Force Awakens was a mistake. I did find it, just that they were just trying to come. They needed a way to introduce him to Rose,
Right.
And it was a cheap way to do it. It was lazy writing at best.
Instead of having him run, they should have just had him try to overpower somebody. Like, have him walk into the starfighter bay or the hangar and go to a shuttle, him get stopped and say, I'm going on that shuttle. I'm going to go save my friend. Not try to run.
Or even just have them meet completely randomly.
Sure.
Because they're on the ship together, right?
Right.
He could be just, because it's a quiet time. There's nothing really going on at the moment. He could just be walking around and she could see him and go, oh, you're Finn!
Right.
And have it go to his head for a second. Yeah, I'm Finn. Yeah,
right.
That's cool. And then they start talking and they come up with the whole plan together to try and knock out the tracking.
Right.
Rather than, because notice there was no callback to the cowardice as far as, he's trying to sneak onto the escape pod, she stuns him, and that's the end of it.
Right.
Right. There's no other thing where, because like in The Force Awakens, his whole concept of running was a major part of his arc. And then finally at the end, when he holds his ground and stands up to Kylo, that was the end of him running. He was willing to put his life on the line for something he believed in.
Right.
And but then they just threw that away and say, no, he's still trying to run, but she stunned him. So does that mean in the next movie, if he gets an opportunity, he's going to run again?
Well, he was trying to get to his friend and save Rey, but it's still just the coward's way out. Luckily, they dropped that quite quickly, even though Rose keeps bringing it up annoyingly. But they do drop that somewhat quickly. And, they figure out, hey, we're being tracked. Only the front ship is going to track for some reason. We need to figure out how to fix this. You're going to laugh at this. Jeremy Johns said that you could leave during the planet period and not miss anything. And so I saw the first part of it, and I got back and saw the part where they meet the thief. But beyond that, I did actually go because I needed to use the restroom. Went and used the restroom and got a refill of my drink during the planet parts. I honestly don't really know what happened during the planet parts, but I still know the movie inside and out. And I almost did that on purpose to see if they were right. It literally adds nothing to it. The only part that would have been confusing to me was the child at the very end. But I had seen the reviews, so I knew what was going on with that.
Right.
But I had missed anything. They're right.
All you missed is a little bit of talk. Yeah, all you missed is a little bit of talk about how rich people are bad, and horse racing is animal abuse. That's pretty much it.
So, and we're not going to stay too much on that. I did see one part of it, which is when they got shocked again, which I thought was funny because security apparently came up at him for some reason and just came up and shocked him the same way he got shocked. Again, which I thought was funny. I liked Maz. They had Maz Kanata. I thought it was interesting the way she came in. She was only there for a couple of seconds, but I thought that was cool and that was consistent with her character, fighting and getting help. Did you have anything you wanted to add on that or not? I thought
as
it was
far
cool.
as Maz,
Yeah.
I think she was kind of wasted, to be honest with you. Again, she was played for laughs, and while she's a naturally funny character, just because of her personality and everything, she was just played for, oh yeah, I'm having a dispute with the Union while she's in the middle of a huge firefight.
Right.
And
so
no, I did not. I personally did not care for her in this because, if they were going to bring Maz into it, okay, I want to know how did she get Luke's old lightsaber.
Right. Joe Cool McCall says, no offense, but why would you do that? I couldn't allow myself to do that if I paid money for a ticket. For two things. I wanted to see, first off, if I didn't watch it, if it impacted the movie at all. It did not. So Jeremy Johns and others, my anti-tracker, were right. Added nothing. I lost nothing in it. And I've seen that trope 1,000 times, so I'm not interested. I get it. Rich people can allow money. Money can corrupt people. They can be bad. I got it. Animal cruelty is bad. I understand that too. Weapons dealers can be bad people, or are bad people. Got it. I don't need to watch it. I already got the message. However, I do like the one point, and if I'm skipping anything here, let me know, but I do like the finally they meet the thief. I really liked him. He seemed very interesting to me.
Benicio del Toro's DJ.
Yeah. Here's an interesting fact, and I saw this, and it's not going to impact you as much because you don't watch the animated series, but there's a Force user named Ezra who has some scars on him, and he's basically like the Luke Skywalker, the naive person in the Rebels. He's the young protagonist.
Right. Yeah, I've heard of him. I don't watch the show, but I know who Ezra is.
He has some cuts on him, and Del Toro has cuts on him in the exact same spaces. Some people think that maybe because you don't know, because there's 2 Force users in Rebels, and something has to happen to him before A New Hope, right? Or they would have come out, you would think. And they're thinking maybe that's him in the future because he is like a kid. But anyway, I really liked, and I think that this was excellently done. So they got done doing this ham-fisted message, but then he's having this conversation with Finn. And Finn's talking about how these are the bad guys, and everybody on that planet is just horrible because they're making money and they're building weapons and they're giving it to the bad guys. They're giving it to the First Order, and he even refers to him as the good guys. And so Del Toro is just going through the schematics because they stole the ship of the weapons dealer, and he stops and he's like, "Oh, look at that!" And it's an X-wing. And I thought that was done really well. I thought that was a good social commentary that, both sides are buying weapons. Both sides are keeping these people as rich as they can be.
Well, I think it could have been better if they had explored it a little bit, which they didn't. They just that was the extent of it. If, for example, if they start out with this preconceived notion that these people are all horrible people because they're weapons dealers, but then they realize, no, these people aren't evil. They're just business people that are making money through capitalism,
right?
And we benefit from them just as much as the First Order. These people obviously predated the First Order because the First Order apparently didn't exist until pretty recently. They were part of the Republic. They're not necessarily evil villains. They're any more than companies that manufacture weapons today are necessarily evil villains. Now, some people think they are just because, they're anti-war and these are weapons of war. And if we didn't have weapons, we wouldn't have war. But you know what? If we decided, you're right, we're not going to have any more weapons, guess what? We would then get completely wiped out by somebody else.
Right.
Weapons are necessary, and somebody's got to make them.
Right.
So that actually could have been a more interesting thing to explore than the whole, oh, look, they're horse racing, and look how horrible that is.
Right.
Yeah.
By the way, if you're watching this and you haven't liked or disliked the video, what's going on? 38 people watching. I need to have up to 38 likes or 38 dislikes. I don't care. Just go ahead and do it. It did seem to shut Finn up a little bit. I agree. That should have been the focus, and they should have had more conversation on it. I just thought that was a good point.
No, that was a good point, but that should have been the whole focus of their little side quest if they were going to have some kind of moral subplot that
right,
we're supposed to care about.
Well, it might have been interesting instead of having that is maybe have a factory or something where they're escaping through the factory, and he's talking about, look at all these massive weapons of mass destruction, look at what they're doing, look at this, and all of a sudden they get into a different area and you see nothing but like X-wings and A-wings and stuff. I think that would have been interesting. So at that point we then now get me wrong, they get on about the same time, so Rey decides to leave. Let's talk about that piece first. And this may be a little bit out of order, guys, but for the most part, you can put these almost in any order, and it still works. So she finds the tree of the ancient Jedi of ancientness. And that's one of the pieces he finds out that she's more powerful. Who are you? The resistance sent you, blah, yada, yada. And so these are all the books of the Jedi. And so she leaves there, and he decides, ultimately it comes down with Rey and the connection between her and Kylo, and apparently they're in the hut and he appears and they're touching and they see each other's futures. And again, this does seem like there's a little bit of tension there, sexual tension, or attraction, maybe, I don't know, sexual tension, attraction. Luke can sense something's going on. He comes into the hut, opens it up, he sees Kylo there, and then just destroys the place. And there's a battle, it's a brief battle between her and Luke. And I think you point this out, that it frustrated you that Rey won that. I don't think Luke was really trying. I think he was just playing on the defensive and was offbeat. I think if he was trying, it would have went a little bit differently. You know, it seemed like that annoyed you. For me, when I watched it, it just didn't look like he was trying. It looked like he was just defending against her.
Fair enough. I mean, I'd have to rewatch it, which again I'm not going to do. But it's just one more example of Rey not capable of really making a serious error. And the fact that she bests Luke, even if he's not giving his all into it, is like, I'm sorry. Do you think you could walk in to a dojo with no experience and take on an 8th degree black belt, and if he wasn't trying that hard, you might actually beat him?
Well,
no.
I mean,
the answer is no. Luke is a Jedi master, and Jedis are not just magicians. They're also martial artists. And Luke is supposedly one of the most powerful of all time. And people that say, oh, well, he cut himself off from the Force, then how did he use the Force to break his fall?
Right.
Yeah.
I think he was just more on the defensive and kind of caught off guard that he found Kylo. But I can kind of see what you're saying. I don't know that it was just girl power. I just think that was what they were trying to write. And
to answer, just so you know, since it inevitably comes up, and I don't know how to pronounce the name, is Questau. I don't know, however you say that. But it says his sister told me that she's a Mary Sue, but I don't know what that is. A Mary Sue, the term comes from fan fiction from the 1970s, where people were writing about a character in Star Trek named Lieutenant Mary Sue. The modern connotation of Mary Sue is a character, not always, but usually female, who is overtly overskilled, overly liked, and doesn't make mistakes, and therefore becomes a boring and kind of pointless character. And yes, I do believe Rey qualifies as a Mary Sue.
Well, and even her flaws are somehow awesome.
Yeah, beneficial.
Yeah. So after this fight, she leaves to go talk to Kylo. And the funny thing is I didn't. So she goes to hand him the lightsaber, and he declines, and she's like, "Well, then Kylo's our only hope." When she turned around, he really should have said, "I'll completely train you in the Jedi ways." If he doesn't want to be it, but he doesn't want her to go to Kylo because it's not going to turn out the way she thinks it is, then that's the only other bartering point that he had. And I'm surprised he didn't do that, but he didn't, and she goes to Kylo. And then he goes to burn the tree down. And what's interesting is, and I like this, they bring Yoda back. They bring Puppet Yoda. CGI Yoda never bothered me, but if people want Puppet Yoda, then we have Puppet Yoda. And he goes to burn it down with the books, like the books of all Jedi knowledge. And he pauses and hesitates, and I didn't see this coming, and I thought it was excellent. Yoda sets it on fire and sets it ablaze. And, he even has a little quip, have you ever read them? Page turners, they're not. And he agreed that maybe it's time for the Jedi to die. I would have never expected Yoda to do that. I thought that was really interesting, and I liked that Yoda might come to the same conclusion that he did and would be there. Beyond giving credence to what he thought, I don't think Yoda added much more than just to be fan service. But I do like that Yoda agreed with him. Did you like that part? What did you think when it came to that?
I thought Yoda was wasted. And, first of all, this to me is another contradiction from prior canon. If you go back to Empire Strikes Back, Obi-Wan makes it clear that as a Force ghost, he cannot intervene in what happens in the world. Yet Yoda can apparently call down lightning from the skies. So if that's the case, why didn't Yoda in Return of the Jedi just show up on the Death Star and start zapping Palpatine with lightning from the sky?
Sure.
No, I didn't like that. I also didn't like that Yoda was out of character because he was acting like Yoda before Luke realized Yoda was a Jedi. He's making jokes and being silly. That was Yoda prior to Luke discovering who he was, and then Yoda got very serious very quickly. I also don't think that Yoda, of all people, would say, "Oh yeah, we should just abandon the Jedi." Yoda is the Jedi.
I think you could see the wisdom. I think you could see the wisdom in Luke's words. Some people are saying, well, he knew that the books weren't in there. That just makes him a liar then.
Yeah,
for no reason at all.
Right. But and I think that's supported because Yoda says, "Oh, there's nothing in there that she doesn't already possess," and she literally does.
Right.
She took the books.
I mean, I guess if you make him weaselly and a liar then, or a liar by act of omission, that just doesn't seem in his character to. Oh
wow! You mean the people did things out of character in this movie? I'm shocked.
So that was that. She goes to see Kylo, and Finn and Rose go with Thief Extraordinaire to stop the tracker. So let's get to the point where we have both Kylo and Rey who are going to go see Snoke. The interesting thing I liked about Snoke was he wasn't what I expected when it came to the big bad Sith. Because usually when you think big bad Sith, you think Emperor Palpatine, very increpid, can't move a lot, but he seemed to have all of his faculties about him and could move quite well. So I expected Sidious, and they didn't have Sidious, which I thought was nice. What were your thoughts before they got into the battle? What were your thoughts on Sidious and or not Sidious, Snoke and his apprentice, Kylo? Did you like the interactions between them, or do you think he was wasted too? I understand that they didn't really explain him or go past it, but with what we were given.
Here's the thing, is that they didn't have to explain every detail about him, because, I mean, we never, until the prequels, we didn't really know much of the backstory of Sidious, right? We didn't even know his name was Sidious, unless you read the books. And so, the fact that Snoke was somewhat of a mystery, I'm okay with. They demonstrated early on in the film that his power level was beyond anything we've seen before, in the way that he just kind of casually bitch slapped Kylo Ren like we'd never seen before.
Right.
And I thought that was awesome. I got the real feeling Snoke felt like an abusive father, and that Kylo was his lapdog, his abused dog.
Right.
And I kind of liked what they were doing with it, and then they took him out like a bitch. And I thought that was especially the way that they did it, because Snoke is being set up as being probably the most powerful Force user we've ever seen on screen, with the possible exception of Luke Skywalker. And he's sitting there going, I can feel every thought in his mind. I can see him as he is going to kill you. He's taking...
Right.
And it's like, what?
And at one point they even show him with his tongue out, which is...
Right. And the thing is, okay, so he can sense everything in the room. He can feel everybody's thoughts. He knows everything that's going on. And he can't hear the metal clanking lightsaber 2 inches away from him vibrating on his metal seat.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, whatever. That was just stupid. Now, and despite Mr. Pete's joke about Snoke returning with robot legs, who knows? Maybe Snoke will come back in some way or another. Maybe that was part of his plan all along, that he's now disembodied and going to possess Kylo or something. Who knows? But I just felt that was such a huge letdown. And the problem is that I'm sure that there are some fan theories that are going on about, oh, Snoke is, he wanted to die so that would release his spirit. Now he could possess Kylo. But you know what? The way they're doing these movies, no, he's probably just dead.
One of the things I did like right before that happened is where she puts out her hand to go get the lightsaber, and he overpowers her and hits her in the head with it. I did think that was funny. It was
that was one of the few comedic moments that I actually liked, because that was in character.
Right.
By the way, I want to point out one quick thing to Rambling Johnny. This is something that's a pet peeve of mine right now, and I mentioned this in my review at all. Please, people, stop blaming Disney for everything in this movie. Yes, Disney owns Lucasfilm, but this is a Kathleen Kennedy, Rian Johnson, J.J. Abrams film. This is not Disney telling them, oh, here's what you got to do. That's not how Disney does things as a corporation. Disney buys companies like Pixar, like Marvel, and of course like Lucasfilm, and then says, hey, you guys are gold, make your movies.
I'm going to disagree a little bit with you. I don't agree with him there on the reset button. I will disagree because I think there was at least one instance that was clearly Disney, that we've never seen before, but we see all the time in Disney. And we'll see if you agree with me in that or not.
Sure. What's that?
I don't know if they inspired it or if they did it because they're Disney. No, well, we'll wait till we get to it. But at that point, I'm going to bring it up because it's a big point, I think. What do you think about the battle scene between the two? Not between the two, but with the two fighting the guys in red.
Oh, yeah. I thought that was stupid.
What kind of weapons did the guys in red have? Because they almost
They
reminded me of... here's the interesting thing, because they were strong enough to resist lightsabers. I thought maybe
they were energy blades of some kind.
They were energy blades that their own armor was designed to resist, but not resist lightsabers. Which is interesting to me because we do know that there is technology and there is armor that can resist a lightsaber. And if I'm like the heads, he may not be a Sith, but if I'm the head of the First Order and there are Force users out there with lightsabers that might want to kill me, I would make sure that my bodyguards had armor that could resist lightsabers. That is just me. So yeah, I mean that seemed like an extended fight scene that didn't really go anywhere beyond them helping each other a little bit.
But you see, and this is just one more thing where I get kind of peeved about Rey being a Mary Sue. You can argue, okay, you want to argue that Luke wasn't really trying in their fight? Sure. You want to argue that at the end of The Force Awakens that the reason that she beat Kylo is because he was injured from Chewie shooting him? Fine. But there is no way you're going to tell me that with her entire training boiling down to a weekend retreat with Luke Skywalker, that now she can take on these elite, well-trained guards with weapons designed to take them out, and she butchers them like she's a Jedi Master. I'm sorry, that's a load of crap. Right. I could see Kylo holding his own against them, but not Rey.
Which he did. It seemed like, and maybe I'd have to rewatch it, but it seemed like
Rey was doing better against him than Kylo.
Right, actually. But they were more focusing on him, which would make sense because he would be the one because she had anytime it was like one or two that she would be fighting, whereas he would consistently have 3 people on him, which I think would make sense. But going back to Finn and Rose and Del Toro, so they're sneaking along. They're trying to get done. The little droid, they put him in a box, which I get why they were doing that, but you think they'd find another way to hide him because that's obviously not working because he's bumping into things, and it seems like that would give them away, which it did because I love how they upsold the evil BB-8. I forget what it was, and he has less than 30 seconds.
Well, it's just like the Porgs. I mean, everybody wants Porgs because they're adorable and cute, but they serve no purpose in the story other than to be on screen so you can say how cute they are.
Right.
And same thing with, I heard one of my favorite, I think it's called BB9B or something like that, but I love what one person put in, BB9E, thank you, Mr. P. But I like what one person put, which I'm going to put in the chat here because I think this is the perfect name for that droid.
Is it going to be appropriate?
Yeah, it's fine. But I love it. This is what they should have called him.
The BB hate?
Yes, that would have been awesome. But yeah, I agree. I think that the BB-8 evil twin thing. Yeah, they should have had the two of them confront each other in some way. The box thing was stupid.
Right.
And by the way, the Chewbacca porg thing where Chewbacca was going to eat the porg, that scene pissed me off.
Why? I thought it was funny.
It was funny, but here's the thing. So, and this is the inconsistency of, I don't know what's going through the mind of Rian Johnson, right? So, it's animal abuse to race horses now, right? It's horrible to eat porgs, but it's perfectly okay for Luke to spear a fish and barbecue it. It's perfectly okay to Luke to milk a monster cow and drink its milk. So it's like, oh, we just don't want to hurt the cute animals.
I'll say this. I thought I was going to hate the porg. I thought they were going to be the Ewoks. They weren't intrusive in the movie at all. I appreciated that. I'm sorry, continue.
Well, no, that's the thing. They were just there to sell products. But no, I mean, even when Chewbacca was holding up that cooked pork, it looked like a chicken.
It did.
Right? And that's probably what it was. It was probably just a chicken that the prop people got. But he should have eaten it. and shouldn't have felt guilty about it. And it's like, oh, but porgs are cute. So and so now are people going to say, oh, don't eat chicken? They're like porgs, only with beaks.
I'll tell you something that makes me feel bad now to this day is a meme that I saw where you know how you'll take chicken and you'll put it in egg to like bread and stuff, depending on what you're doing, and it has that scene where they're putting the chicken in egg, and it's like, I'll bathe you in the blood of your children before I eat you or something. And that's what that kind of reminded me of, where he's eating like the dude's friend or whatever. Yeah. So anyway, I didn't even get the anti thing. Do you really think that was a like don't eat meat type thing? I thought they were just doing it for laughs.
I heard someone say, and I have to, again, I don't want to see the movie again, but I heard somebody say there was like a vegan message to the movie as well.
I didn't get that at all.
Yeah, I didn't notice it if there was.
Okay.
But is there a point to this?
Yeah.
Is there a need to have, we're going to feel guilty about eating porgs I don't get it.
Right. So Finn, Del Toro, and Rose fail at their mission, which at least they're fail. I like the fact that they're failing, that they don't succeed. So now let's get to the part that really irritates me, because they're doing all this at the same time. So we're going to try to switch between, because you have to explain one before you get back to the other. So you have Poe. He's getting more and more upset and more uppity. And he goes up there and he demands, he's like, what's going on? Why is this? Why are we doing this? And he sees that they're filling up the transports and whatnot. And he's like, so running, that's what we're going to do after all this. We're going to run. And ultimately commits treason. Mm-hmm. He mutinies. And he gets other people to mutiny with him. And what's interesting to me is, so they do the scene where they're mutinying, and at this point, if she hadn't explained up to this point, why she still chooses not to explain is beyond me. Maybe you're pissed at him, maybe he doesn't need to know, but now you have guns trained on you, and everyone on board this ship is going to die if you don't get this right. So now you need to get those guns away from you, right? You need to make him understand. So why didn't she say, okay, this is what we're planning to do, instead of saying, you better be right about this?
Well, because reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
A wizard did it.
So he goes up, they take the bridge, they shut it down, and then Finn and them fail, which I think was awesome that they failed. Just because sometimes the good guys fail. I love the 3PO part too, where 3PO starts running. He's like, "I'm not going to be a part of this." Did you like that? I think that humor actually.
Yeah, that was. We see the difference is that was in character for 3PO. That's where humor works in a movie that takes itself seriously, like Star Wars does. Is if it is in character.
Right.
And by the way, I have to say, because Ian Mays is asking who did mutinying better, Michael Burnham or Poe, the answer is clearly Poe, because Poe was successful.
Yeah, he actually mutinied for a little bit.
Yeah. But yeah,
So, and then the door opens, all of a sudden it's Leia, because we have to have Leia, and she stuns him. Here's what pisses me off.
And why did Leia just shoot him? How about point the gun at him and he surrenders?
Well, it was played for laughs and because he deserved it. He deserved to get shot. And at this point, he
didn't.
He was a threat. He was a threat. He had just
doing the right thing.
He was not doing the right thing.
He was, based on the information he had available, he was trying to save the Alliance. He was trying to save the Resistance. He was absolutely.
He was not trying to do the right thing. No, that's ridiculous. That's the most ridiculous thing. He was not. Even if her whole plan was to escape that way, that's not. No, I mean, how is mutinying? How is keeping them on guard?
Actually,
what was he going to do?
As a person who served in the military, that would be the definition of an illegal order that she was giving. If she was seriously just expecting them to run until they run out of gas and then die, then absolutely Poe was within his rights to relieve her of her command.
Appealing to your military service is a fallacy, just so you're aware.
No, it's not.
It is.
You were saying he had no right to do it. I have experience that says otherwise. If you have a commanding officer that is doing something illegal or immoral, then you are under an obligation to disobey.
Would you have mutinied?
Under those circumstances, knowing only what Poe knew, hell yes, I would.
Okay, then you would have deserved to get the Poe. You should have deserved to get the fate Poe did. He should have followed the command. There's no reason Poe should.
So you're saying you should blindly follow orders, even though those orders are going to doom everybody.
Well, they're not going to doom everybody. That's why you have the command.
Based on the information, and here's the thing, Poe, and Poe is 100% justified in his mutiny, because all the information that he had, and he asked for clarification. He directly asked for, hey, you tell me what's going on, because we're going to die here.
He's a fighter pilot. He doesn't need to know the entire plan. That's like the janitor. That's like the janitor. So the janitor did too. So if the janitor the janitor had every right to mutiny as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Because here's the thing: you are in a combat situation. You have every single person on that ship is going to die if they don't figure out a way out of this. Now you come up with a plan that says we're going to get everybody onto these little ships. We're going to cloak them and sneak onto this little rebel base. That's awesome. That's a great plan. But guess what? If you don't tell them about it, the only thing you're telling them is we're just going to keep going in a straight line, and then when we run out of gas, we're dead.
She has no reason to believe that there isn't a spy on there. They're being tracked in hyperspace.
She has no reason to believe that.
They're being tracked in hyperspace. They
don't
know how.
That out.
No, they didn't.
They just have the technology to do that now. That was their explanation.
They don't know what else is going on. She has no way of knowing who to trust and who isn't. Poe should have gotten what Leia did. That was wrong.
You agree with Poe's lesson, basically, that you should just blindly follow orders.
No. The lesson should have been that if you mutiny in those situations, you die. So that was the wrong. Leia, the problem that I have with Leia is that she shot the gun on stun. That's the problem I have with Leia. He should have got a bullet between the eyes. Him and everybody else. Yes, absolutely. They almost got everybody killed. You can't trust them.
Wow.
They deserve to die. Yes,
so you're saying
I'm saying
even though
should have shot him. They should have took him to the hangar. They should have took him to the hangar. They should have made a big deal about it. They should have had a celebration.
Whoever sees this video, you should unsubscribe from Lore.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what you should do. No. No, they should have
how
shot him
can you
between.
possibly
And everybody that pulled a gun, everybody that agreed with him,
I hope
everybody.
you're kidding about
I'm
this,
not.
because
I'm not. He is a traitor. He committed treason. He almost got everybody killed. He didn't follow orders. He really.
Wow.
They didn't know who they needed to trust. He should have died.
Okay, so quick poll right now, everybody in the chat. Just a quick,
appeal to popularity. Doesn't matter who they agree with.
so anything you're. Oh well, that's just an appeal.
I'm sorry that you continue to use fallacies.
Well, I'm sorry that you're using. I don't know what
logic, using smartness.
No,
he deserved to die.
Logic.
He deserved to die. He deserved to die. Every pilot that agreed with him deserved to die. That chick who was on the bridge, she deserved to die. 3PO, because they didn't know.
On the bridge deserved to die.
Yeah, she's the one that helped out with it. She helped with the mutiny. Yep.
I'm not sure which.
I tell you what, if you choose the right answer where Poe should have died, put 1 in the chat. If you agree with Michael that he was in the right and that he should have probably got like a hug and a cuddle and maybe a medal for almost getting everybody killed, put 2 in the chat. And then we'll see. Yeah, I'm going to put 1. Everybody's going to put 2 because they like irritating me.
Jason's on your side.
Well,
Jason's
accurate. April and Mason are just trying to irritate me. They both are 1s as well. Mr. Pete already voted once. You can't vote twice. Right Gamers doesn't know what he's talking about. Hot Wheels has been hacked. Mr. Pete 8680 doesn't get that you get 1 vote.
I think the results.
Yeah, that's fine. Your appeal to authority worked. That's fine. That's great. Hey, you think Poe was right because you don't like women. Let's continue on. Let's continue having the conversation.
I didn't realize I was on a show with Movie Bob.
I can't help that I'm with a raging anti-feminist. Okay, so.
Wow.
Yeah, that's going to get comments.
Are you? Please tell me you're kidding.
I'm not. I think Poe deserved to get shot between the eyes. As soon as I saw that, I was like, he deserves to die. That said,
how can you even say that?
Because he almost got everybody killed and he disobeyed a direct order.
Based on the information that they refuse to share the information with them.
Because they don't know who they can trust and who they don't. You trust the command.
You think that they can't trust the most well-known, best pilot in the entire Resistance who's been fighting for them for years?
Just to confirm, this is the same guy that got all of their bomber squad killed because he was jump before you think type dude. That guy, right?
Right.
That got everybody
Which is
killed
all
at the start
the more
of it.
reason
that
to make sure he knows what's going
so
on so that he doesn't do it
kill
again.
more people. So he does.
Which
they
is
should have
exactly
just shot
what
him.
happened. Because they were stupid and not realizing, hey, yes, Poe has a problem. He's trigger happy. He's an action guy. He doesn't want to hold back. He has a problem there. I'm not saying he's a perfect character. If he was, he would be Rey. But the problem is that they refuse. They flat out refuse to tell him information he absolutely needed to have.
Okay.
And I don't understand how you can even suggest that he didn't need to have that information.
Because he didn't need to have because they don't know who they can trust, and he's obviously not trustworthy. I'm not. We're going to agree to this.
About to be killed, and you really think that they're worried about trust issues? And
I do, in fact, especially since the plan relies on the First Order not knowing about it, because as soon as the First Order realizes, they start killing people like they're crazy. This is something extremely delicate that some people just don't need to know about. In my opinion.
Your opinion
is
wrong.
No, it's okay. That's fine. That's whatever, Anyway, so they start doing the plan. How did I forget the chick that had the purple hair? I actually liked that actress.
Her Vice Admiral Holden.
What did you think about her staying behind? Did you think that was contrived? I didn't think it was contrived or anything, but I could see some people said they thought it was kind of contrived. I didn't. I thought it was a little bit cliche, but I didn't really have an issue with it.
I was actually angry at it.
Why?
Because what they did was piss away a golden opportunity and replaced it with one more statement of girl power. What they needed to do, and I'm sorry, but and this is not a diss on Laura Dern or the character of Holdo, who was introduced in this film and really was a pointless character, except to be, I'm the person who's not going to tell Poe something and then sacrifice myself to save everybody else. That was her arc. But her character was completely pointless. They didn't have that. What they didn't do was take advantage of a golden opportunity they had to actually finish a character arc with style, which would be to have Admiral Akbar pilot the ship into the suicide run instead of having him go out the airlock like a bitch.
Right. No, I get that. I can agree with that. They could have kept him.
And in fact, here's exactly how I would do it. And I know this may sound silly, but this is exactly what I would do if I were writing the whole thing. Is you start out with, Akbar obviously on the bridge of the ship, looking at making sure that getting everything ready. The Imperials, of course, or Imperials, but the First Order, just like they did, would continue firing on the individual ships because of the fact that they know that it's just a distraction, right?
Right.
And so then Akbar gets on the comlink, and he's like, "Oh, so I see you're ignoring me. Well, I'm glad you're doing that because it's a trap."
That would have been stupid. That would
and then have him warp into him. I think that would have been awesome.
That would have been stupid. I would have hated that.
I know you would have, which is all the more reason that I would love it.
I'm glad they didn't do that. One thing that I thought might have been interesting is to pull a double trick on him, which was, but they would have still been tracked, but to keep everybody on the main ship and make it look like they were trying to escape, in which they would have focused and not kept with the main carrier, and so the carrier actually jumps out with everybody. Might have been interesting. All right, so let's get back to Finn and Rose. So they're beating them up. We have Finn and Rose, who, well, it's not Finn and Rose yet. There's still everybody getting battle. So I'm sorry, you're right. So Poe and them get on the ship. They realize that the ship is firing. It realizes that they were trying to cloak or whatever, and they begin firing and destroying and killing everybody, right?
Yes, because apparently in Star Wars technology, cloak just means unless you're looking for it, you don't notice it.
Maybe they didn't explain it well, but maybe it was a different kind of scan, one that's not common that they wouldn't think to use. I mean, I don't know. You're right. It's
stupid.
You need to use
the ships out there. Really? Oh yeah, they're right there. Shoot them.
Use the cloak detection sensors.
Yeah.
Which
we normally turn off to save power.
Especially when we're tracking someone who's trying to get away from us.
It's a trap.
I did enjoy the betrayal of Del Toro, and I'll be honest, I can't much blame Del Toro. It's not the most honorable thing, but I can't much blame what Del Toro did.
No, I don't.
He's an
opportunist.
Well, yeah. And I don't think he was ever. I think he's neutral. I don't think he ever meant. I don't think he went in wanting to betray them, because everything he did, even with like the necklace, right? He just needed it to bypass whatever. He didn't really want to keep it. That wasn't necessarily an evil part of his arc. Then he was caught, and he's like, "Well, we're caught. We'll die if we don't help them out. Let's make a deal. Oh, look, they're trying to escape that way." As you said, an opportunist. I like the conversation between him and Finn, which continue that arc, which is he's like, because Finn's just all beaten down. He's like, "Don't worry, you're going to blow them up at some point," which is true. It just goes back and forth. They kill you, you kill them. It just world keeps on spinning. I thought that was consistent, and I like that message because it's true. Someone's killing someone at some point, so at some point it's just going to turn around. And I didn't really think that Finn had a good comeback for that, in my opinion.
Of course.
So I don't blame Del Toro. I think that was an awesome point. Now let's talk about the fight between Rey and Kylo. And here's where I think they had a huge misstep, and they could have done something very, very different, which would have been very interesting. So they defeat all the guards, and Rey's like, "Great, we defeated all the guards. Now stop them from firing on the rebels." And Kylo goes into this whole, we can create something new. We need to let the rebellion die. We need to let the First Order die, the Empire die, the light, the bad. Here would have been an interesting turn of events. Instead of having them fight again, if he said, "Join me," if Rey said, "Okay, I agree, everything needs to die." And it goes along with the theme of what Luke had, right? And she says, all right, everything needs to die. There needs to be no rebellion. There needs to be no First Order. Order them to stop firing, and let's take the fleet, and let's make something new. Make something that is light and dark. You have Rey from the light, Kylo from the dark. Right. And have them join teams. And it would have cut the movie a little bit shorter, or they would have had to find some other grand ending. No,
it wouldn't have been 2.5 hours long.
Right. But, and I understand it's not the epic fight at the end, but then the last part of the movie you see is the ship stop firing, they turn around, and they just leave. I think that would have been a very interesting ending, because you know what's going to happen, right? I think that would have been great and would have been thematic.
I think what we could have gotten eventually would be, and the interesting turn on things would be to have Rey and Kylo both dark.
Right.
And now you have a resistance that doesn't have a Jedi against 2 Force users. And Leia is the only Force-sensitive person we know of. Right. Now, at this point, Finn and Poe need to step up, or maybe that kid, with the broomstick. But something needs to come up where, now, we've got to take another step.
Right. I thought that would have been interesting, but no, they have the classic, let's fight. But
they don't even fight.
Yeah, they just fight over a lightsaber, which ultimately gets destroyed.
They play a little tug of war.
Yeah. So they figure out what's going on. They're firing. The Admiral, whatever her name is, I liked her, so it's sad that I don't remember her name, but Admiral whatever turns around and uses hyperspace, which again, this is kind of like you said, they've never used this before, and I liked what you did in your video, which is up right now. It'll be linked below. We'll talk about it a little bit. It's getting later than I thought, so we may not talk about it a lot, but his video, he brings this up. If you can do this, first off, they should have won the Clone Wars, but why not create like droids specifically meant to get in ships and just hyperspace through other ships? That would be a very effective way of destroying fleets, like insanely effective, since apparently it destroys all the ships, right?
Yeah, because she not only took out, the Supremacy was crippled, and all the other Star Destroyers were apparently destroyed. And, which is like, number one, that shouldn't work, even from what little we know of hyperspace. Yeah, that shouldn't have happened.
Does it work like warp, where the ship technically isn't moving, they're just in a bubble that's shifting?
Well, no, it's hyperspace is a little different than warp drive, in that with hyperspace, the ship is moving, but the ship is moving through these hyperspace corridors.
Right, lanes make it easier, yeah.
Right. And so what you have to do is basically you get you accelerate your ship into hyperspace, and then you when it goes into this other dimension of hyperspace, and then you can travel faster than light, because it's like a transwarp conduit from Star Trek.
Right.
Basically, it's exactly like a transwarp conduit from Star Trek.
So then we have Finn and Rose, who are now fighting. Here's the one thing I didn't like. So you have Finn and Rose. They're about to be executed, right? And then the way they're executed, they're surrounded by stormtroopers, and they're going to chop their heads off, because chopping someone's head off is somehow slower than putting a bolt through their head.
Right.
But okay. So the hyperspace happens. The ship is crippled. And then they wake up. They're on the floor, and everything is like in disarray and everything, and they're trying to get their bearings. And then you have Phasma walking up with a block of stormtroopers. So what happened? They went through hyperspace. They were knocked out. Phasma somehow got up, got a column of stormtroopers, made sure they were all in formation, and started walking back out, because she was in the same space they were. It would seem
a wizard did it.
Yeah, it would seem like they would be a little bit more disarray than we had. And I found that fight completely... I like that they were building up with Finn and the anti-Finn, right? Finn and the Nemesis. But I know you feel like it was a Boba Fett, but even just ignoring that, it wasn't fulfilling to me. It didn't feel like Phasma was built up enough to be a Nemesis for him.
Right.
And the fight just didn't really do much for me. It was the only fight that I really didn't feel like was impactful, you know?
Well, I said the only fight I felt was impactful was honestly the opening sequence, but with Poe and the Dreadnought. I felt that the Phasma thing was, she was a complete Boba Fett. It was a waste of time in that basically, what do we know about Phasma? She's a stormtrooper with chrome armor, and it looks cool. And her rank is captain. Do we know anything else about her?
Well, her eye color. I mean, I don't remember it now, but I'm sure it's there.
Yeah, but even so what?
Yeah, I know. I was just being sarcastic.
So her eyes are blue, or whatever I don't know, but her character was a complete waste.
Right.
In that she didn't have a character, she was just a cool looking presence.
Right. And she didn't have much.
And granted, she was a very cool looking presence, but that's not a character. That's just an action figure, which is in the end, unfortunately, all she is an action figure.
Pensive Ruin says you have to read the novel. So we've talked about this before on other channels. And
if you have to read the novel, then that means you didn't make a movie.
Yeah, I think ancillary stuff can add to it. I think it makes it very interesting, like we said at the beginning, where it really explains why the First Order is really massive and the New Republic was weak, even though the New Republic being weak still makes no sense. But the build-up of the First Order, which I did actually enjoy. But from a movie standpoint, if you have to go outside of the movie to understand the movie, then the movie, I think, at some level is a bit of a failure.
Right.
Like the Last Jedi, like the Force Awakens, in my opinion, that movie is still somewhat of a failure because things that happen in it's not explained, like her ability to be so powerful. It's simply not. It's not a complete movie, in my opinion, and I think that would be consistent here. There may be a complete explanation of it, but I don't see it in the movie, and I can only really take what's in the movie itself.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, because there are good ways and bad ways to do this kind of stuff. And, for example, a movie that I really like, Star Trek 2009, they had a comic book that was a prequel to the movie that got into, Spock meeting up with Picard and Data and setting up the whole thing for how they're going to try to save the Romulans. And it was interesting. And if you read it, it added a little bit to the film. However, if you didn't read it, there's enough exposition in the movie to where it's not going to hurt you to not know that Spock met up with Geordi and Data and Picard beforehand to set it up.
Right.
That is not an essential part of the story. And that's where the problem with Phasma comes in, is that Phasma has no story except for in a novel. And the novel, by the way, is titled Phasma. I have not read it. I don't plan on reading it because, quite frankly, this current universe of Star Wars is not interesting enough for me to actually sit down and read a novel about it.
Right. So, fast forwarding a little bit, they get to the planet. Did they ever even tell us what this planet's name is? Do we know? I don't remember.
Where the base is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Crate.
Crate. Okay. Yeah. So they get to Crate. Here's an interesting thing, because when I watched it, it was unoriginal, but I did at least like the little twist on it. Because when
it's Utah.
Well, here's the thing, though. When they were down there and they were getting in the trenches and everything, I looked at that and I was like, Hoth. That's exactly what they're doing. They're doing the Battle of Hoth again. But I liked the fact that now it was salt, and so when they were walking, it turned red and everything. And it wasn't exactly the Battle of Hoth, but it's basically the Battle of Hoth. Here's where I think the Disney part comes in. I'm moving a little bit quicker because it's getting a little bit later. You have the assault. They're as you said, this makes no sense. So they got this big door that apparently no one can get past, even with a disabled ship. I still think that ship probably had some pretty good guns on it that they could destroy from orbit, but let's just assume that they didn't. So they get this miniaturized Death Star weapon, which again,
because
don't even.
reasons.
Yeah, because apparently we make miniaturized Death Star weapons now. They put it, and they have to carry it. So when they land with it, they're like, let's not land right on the door because we know they don't have any defenses there. Let's land it across the desert and then move it across and bring it slowly because, let's be sporting about this. Let's give them a chance, right? Because that makes a lot of sense. Here's where it gets Disney. So they have the assault on the weapon, the miniaturized whatever it is. And I like the fact that all the weapons are outdated and everything, and that because it's Empire era equipment, so it would be old. I like the fact that the rebels aren't fighting with anything; they're fighting with older tech. I think it was funny and it was interesting. So they're doing the assault, and Poe finally realizes I don't have to assault everything, and the power of the power of backing off. We're not going to lose everybody here. We're not going to do this death run. But Finn keeps on, and Finn is going to go, and he's going to go down through the throat, and he's going to stop it, and he's going to buy him more time, right? He's saved by the power of love, which was a very Disney moment for me. So he's about to run into it. She hits him and knocks him off. And like you say in your movie, or in your video, is responsible for every death that comes after that. And then she's like, we're not going to beat them by actually doing tactics that will win. We're going to beat them through the power of love. And then kisses him. She doesn't call it love, but that's exactly what it is, and that's exactly what you would do.
No, she does call it love. She doesn't say power.
I thought she said something else.
She said we're not going to win by fighting the things we hate. We're going to win by fighting for the things we love.
Okay, even better. That's exactly what you would do in a Disney movie.
You can say that, but you could say that you could argue that they would say that in a lot of different types of movies. I don't think that Disney told them to put a Saved by the Power of Love into the movie.
I don't think Disney told them that, but I think they had Disney executives that influenced that.
I don't. I don't whatsoever.
Well,
because
also don't think Poe should get shot, so.
Yes, because Poe was the only person trying to act in the best interest of everybody.
Yeah, because that's what you want. People committing treason when you're trying to say. Anyway, what were you saying?
There's nothing about that is intrinsically Disney. Disney, I mean, you could say, well, happy stories are Disney, and this is a happy story in that respect, so therefore it's Disney. But then you could say that about any story where the characters don't all die.
No, I'm not saying it's a happy story. I'm saying that they're trying to use the power of love to defeat the Empire. That's not how you... Not the Empire, I'm sorry, the First Order. Yeah, that's not how you...
Okay, where's a Disney movie where they use the power of love to destroy the bad guy?
Let's see. That would be Cinderella, Snow White.
Okay, Cinderella... First of all, Cinderella was a fairy tale long before Disney adapted it, and that plot line was
That was Disney. That was a Disney movie, wasn't it?
Cinderella was not originally a Disney movie.
Okay, yes, Disney stole everything it ever got, but Disney, you asked me for a movie that they did where they used the power of love to defeat it, and that was one of the things they used the power of love. I'm telling you that it was influenced by...
That'd be like saying, we're going to do Sleeping Beauty, but not have her sleep.
How? I don't get that right. I sincerely don't. How are you pulling that together?
Because Cinderella is a love story. Cinderella is that... That'd be like saying, it's a romantic comedy because they use the word love in it. You're not making any sense.
I want to invite everyone. I want to thank everyone for being on this fallacy trip night. Now we have Michael moving the goalpost, where he asked me to show a movie where they defeat the power of love, and now all of a sudden it can't be a love
Cinderella
story.
is a love story.
I agree, and they use the power of love to win.
No, they don't. You know what? If you actually want to get into it, Cinderella, it's just a romance about a prince that's in love with this girl, and he tries to find her, but they're not like defeating villains and stuff. Now, in Sleeping Beauty, there's a dragon, but he doesn't beat the dragon with the power of love. He beats her with a sword. So I'm.
Does it not? Do they not use the power of love in Cinderella or in Snow White? Do they not do that? Okay. I think it was influenced by Disney. I do think it was influenced by Disney. I do. And I don't think there's many Disney moments.
I think that moment was stupid because she did, in essence, doom the First Order. She did doom the Resistance. If it wasn't for the fact that Luke Skywalker just happens to show up and save the day, everybody would be dead because of her actions.
Right. So Sleeping Beauty is in an open eye coma. I don't know what that's all about. All right. So I honestly, I don't even see why this door is an issue. Again, they should be able to hit it from space. You're telling me they don't have like bunk busters or something like that? But
well, that's the thing. I mean, besides that, now if you want to say the Supremacy is so disabled that it has no weapons, okay, I could buy that. And so, the walk. If because of that, they're taking their little mini Death Star box and putting it in there, but that opens up a whole other can of worms. Why don't all the Star Destroyers why aren't they lined with these little mini Death Star boxes?
Well, they weren't they? That's what they were blowing up the.
No, those were just regular turbo.
Oh, were they? I thought they were the mini Death Star of Doom.
No, well, they had the big cannons on the bottom of the thing that they were bombing the planet with. Yeah, but I'm just saying they should. If this laser is so powerful, they should have them all. Because that gun that they were dragging across the desert was not that big.
Right.
And so they could mount like 10 of them on turrets on every Death Star, so that anytime another ship came near, bam, they're gone.
Right.
You know.
So let's get to the epic fight. So ultimately, they're trying to send out...
There was no epic fight.
They're trying to
that
send out...
That was my biggest complaint about this movie.
They're trying to send out a help rescue thing, and Luke all of a sudden shows up. I thought that was... Let me say this. I had seen the reviews beforehand, so I knew what was happening. But at the time, it would have... Because it did enter my mind that I would have questioned this. That would have seemed off because I would have asked, how did he get there? Because he didn't have a working ship. We saw the X-Wing in the water, but assuming that it had been there for as long as it probably had been there, I don't think it would have been working. He didn't have a way of getting there, which would have just been a minor plot issue. The fight, I agree, there wasn't necessarily a huge fight.
There wasn't a fight at all.
I did like the standoff between them, though. And it was another part where I think the humor worked. So he's firing and trying to destroy and kill him and things like that. And then Luke comes out and he just does that thing on his shoulder, which I thought was funny. And then, Kylo is consumed. And Kylo says, I want to go down there. Hask tries to stop him and say it. And I thought it was funny where he just sends Hask against the wall or just brutalizes him. And the dude in front is like, I'm on it right now, or we'll make it so, or whatever you want. Just completely deadpan. I thought that was funny. The conflict, I guess, if you don't want to call it a fight between them, was interesting. It was more a war of words. How did you feel about the fact he's like, if you try to strike me down, I'll be with you always. And then ultimately he says, I'll see you, kid. How did you feel about that? Because it seemed like he was using emotional warfare that's going to come back to haunt him. I mean, how'd you feel about the interaction between them all together?
I hated almost everything about their confrontation at the end of this film.
Why didn't you like it? What about it did you not... why?
I didn't like anything. Well, first of all, Luke Skywalker, supposedly the most powerful Force user in history, basically walks out a door, gets shot at, and then disappears. That was his entire thing. That was it. There was nothing else. He walks out a door, he stands there, and then he disappears.
Right.
And that was completely pointless. So now, and I know I did say this in my review, but the way I would have written that is have Luke, number one, he did have transportation. He had the X-Wing fighter. There's nothing that says he couldn't have pulled it out of the water and flown.
Right, but if it had been there for how long had he been there? And in the water? I mean, we don't know if an X-Wing can stand up to...
We know that Luke's X-Wing was in the swamp in Hoth for at least a week or so.
Well, it wasn't there for 3 decades. I mean,
yeah, but Luke wasn't there for 3 decades either, because when he went back to murder his nephew wasn't a fetus. All right, so he wasn't doing an abortion.
I love how every time we talk about it, you rewrite it. Like, instead of him just all of a sudden coming up to murder, now he had a plan. Before he even got there, he was going to murder his...
Well, I'm just saying, he didn't go in to perform an abortion, right? He was, it was obviously within the last few years.
It could have been like
at the most, it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Could have been like a 78-month abortion.
Yeah. Anyway, so so number one, we don't know what the condition of the X-wing is because we just don't know.
Right.
And let's face it, writers can do whatever they want. So if they want it to work, they just say it works. So you have him pull the X-wing out of the water, fly to Crate, actually walk out that door. You actually have the walkers blasting at him, but he holds up a force shield and deflects all of that. Does the little brush off his shoulder because I think that was a cute moment. And then, he does his little meditation look, closes his eyes, holds up his hands, and then every single walker's legs just collapse. And, and so Luke is now, so now their invasion forces are useless. And so at that point, Kylo has to come down and confront Luke. You have Kylo and Luke have some kind of epic force battle, some epic lightsaber action, and that's where we really unleash the full power of what these two are capable of. Then, when Luke is of course monitoring using the Force what's going on behind him, once everybody's on the Millennium Falcon and taking off, then he stops and pulls an Obi-Wan and says, and basically gives him the opportunity to just kill him so he can transition into being in the Force, which is what he wanted all along.
I mean, I agree. I think that would have been interesting. And
it would have been epic.
Yeah,
there was nothing epic in this film.
We would have been complaining at that point about how can Rey stand up against Kylo if he's that powerful. But yeah,
well, Rey's already Rey is already a Jedi Master with no training, right. So
So I like that. I do like during the battle how Luke's you may have not have noticed this, but when Luke moves in the salt, it doesn't turn red like it does with Kylo, which I thought was a nice touch. I'm not saying it was worse.
I honestly did not notice it. I've heard people talk about it, and I felt bad because I missed it.
Right.
I caught the fact that his beard was darker. I caught the fact that he was using the blue lightsaber. But I did not catch the fact that he didn't leave footprints.
Right. Well, I was looking for it too because people had mentioned it. I
didn't have any spoilers going in.
Right.
I figured out Luke wasn't actually there, but I did not notice the footprints.
Right.
Which I felt stupid because as soon as I heard somebody mention it, I was thinking back and I could remember it because they had all those close-up shots of their feet.
Right. So. He's not there. He strikes him and he says, "I'll be seeing you around, kid." I did like that part. And they escape for all intents and purposes. Let me ask you this. Snoke said, and someone asked, do I think Snoke is really dead or they're going to bring him back? I think he's dead. I think they're done with him. I don't think they'll bring him back. Let me ask you this. They have the last moment where she's looking at him, he's looking at her, and she closes the door. Snoke claims to be the one to have caused their connection. Now that he's dead, do you think that the connection just continued to exist, or how did that happen? Do you think they even thought about that?
I don't think they, I don't think that they thought anything of it.
Right.
I think that, Snoke and Rey are Snoke and Rey. Kylo and Rey. You could argue that Snoke created this connection, but he doesn't have to be there every time they communicate. That he just kind of created the bridge for them. But who knows? Is it going to even matter in 2 years when the next episode comes out? Probably not.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I have this up. I don't think we're going to get into it, but there was a lot that they missed that they didn't address that it just seems to be gone to the wayside. So the end of it ends with the kid, of course, who has the broom and holds it up. I don't know that they're going to do anything with that kid in this series. I've heard a compelling argument that he's going to be they're doing another trilogy that has
Rian Johnson is doing his own trilogy.
Oh, that's fantastic. That seems like a good idea.
Yeah, it's going to be so awesome to know that we're going to have 3 more movies produced by this idiot.
I don't know that he's an idiot, but I did not like his writing here. So yeah, that was. I said this on Twitter. If you're not following me, twitter.com/lore reloaded.
That's what they should call it, by the way, Mr. Pete. The next one should be Star Wars Episode 9, Broom Boy. And that should literally be his name. They'd be like, "Oh, who are you? My name is Broom Boy." You know, and that's going to be like the whole thing, the adventures of Darth Broom Boy, you know.
I think,
and he's going to be so powerful that he'll hold his broom and it will transform into a lightsaber where the broom bristles are what glows. And so he hits you with the broom bristles and it just cuts you in half and stuff. And he can shoot force lightning that will rip planets in half.
no, it doesn't transform it, but he can use it like a lightsaber. So if someone brings a lightsaber down and he defends, and it actually defends against it. Here's what I'll say.
No, not Darth Broom Boy.
It breaks even Disney continuity, because in the Clone Wars and things, they should have been able to use this. So it's a bad power creep. The Force is used in ways that it wasn't able to. There are minor issues here and there. I think that there are minor issues here and there beyond that. I think that if you look at it as kind of a reimagined and just ignore the continuity, you can really enjoy it.
But it's a sequel.
Well, you can still, I think you can really enjoy it. I think it can be enjoyable. I think for kids who are growing up and this is what they're watching. I even put this, I'm doing a review tomorrow, and you're going to hate that review, by the way. I think that the characters here in both the Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, I think that it's not the same as what we grew up with, but I think that these characters do have staying power, that they could be considered iconic in some ways.
I don't.
I think that
they're going to be, well, especially after this movie, I think they're going to be forgotten in 20 years because this movie is so politically motivated that that frankly, you know, because here's the thing, you know why one of the reasons that people hate the prequels and nobody stops to think about it is because the prequels were George Lucas's really lame attempt at inserting politics into Star Wars. This movie takes that 100 steps further. And I think that's, you know, I think that ultimately these movies are going to be considered forgettable.
I think that the way it was built up with I think Rey specifically, but I think Rey, Finn, and Poe are going to be considered iconic for the kids. I think they are. But that's that. So, guys, if you liked what you've seen and you want to see some really good breakdown, I mean, this video has, 28,000 views now?
Something like that.
You should go. It'll be linked in the bottom. It's the Anti-Tracker's most recent as of this video, and where he breaks down a lot of the issues. He talks about the politics of it. He doesn't get into the politics themselves. He just explains the politics and why there is an actual issue with it. Really, it showcases the differences in my channel and his channel and why you should be subscribed to both, I think. The only thing is that you may not like the fact that he doesn't believe that when you commit treason, you should die for it. And plus,
well, actually, based on what we saw in our little quick poll, that should make me much more popular than you.
Yeah, that's fine. You can continue those fallacies. Also, we had someone who wanted to come on, and I was going to bring him on, but I don't think that it worked out. I wanted Perseus. I may not have come on this one. I might have suggested we bring him on another one. But Perseus, who had been doing Super Chats, has some really interesting points that I think we may bring him on, and all of us can have a conversation at a later point. But what I'm going to tell you guys is that you shouldn't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Tomorrow I am going to be having a review. An interesting way of doing it, I actually got it from the Anti-Tracker there. On Friday, I'm doing a what if that I'm sure that the Anti-Tracker is going to make another video and get thousands of views on by bashing me about what have happened if the Dominion won. I got some interesting ideas.
I only bash you when you're wrong.
Yeah, of course you do. And what if they had won? I got a couple of great ideas. I'm really looking forward to it. That one's going to be a big one. Then we got the weekend where we're not doing anything. Monday is Christmas. I'm going to be having I'm going to be having people from other YouTube channels who I like watching come on and do videos. But since Monday is Christmas, I will in fact be doing one video then, and it's going to be a lore breakdown and possibly a battle breakdown of the Star Wars Holiday Special. So that's going to be a fun one. Guys, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, it's going to be a lore breakdown. And then if there's any kind of combat or battle, I don't think there was, but if there is, it's going to be a battle breakdown.
Well, you could talk about Boba Fett riding a dinosaur.
Yeah, it's going to be...
Did you realize that was Boba Fett's first appearance?
I did not realize that. But it's going to be interesting. Guys,
that came out before Empire Strikes Back. That was actually Boba Fett's first. Well, actually, with the special editions, Boba Fett shows up in A New Hope. Although that's not a movie title.
I don't know how true it is, but I heard that Luke didn't expect for for Star Wars to do well at all, so he's just like, whatever, let's try to milk it for what we can, which is why we have the holiday special.
You mean Lucas?
Yeah, Lucas. George Lucas. Yes. That's why he did the holiday special, because he didn't know how iconic it was going to be, or how much staying power.
I don't know. Lucas is a horrible filmmaker, but he's a brilliant visual effects designer, and he's also a very shrewd businessman.
Great story.
And that's why he let 20th Century Fox keep the rights to Star Wars, although those rights are now going back to Disney with the recent Disney Fox deal. So the original films now belong to Disney. But but Lucas always retained the rights to the toys and stuff like that, and that's how he really made his fortune.
Right. Okay. Guys, don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next Lore Reloaded. That was the wrong button. We're still recording.
Okay.